There are moments in life when sadness feels overwhelming, when it seems to fill every corner of the heart and cast a shadow over even the brightest day. In those moments, we often believe that sadness defines us, that it will never leave us, and that we are powerless before it. But Buddhism teaches us a different way of seeing. It reminds us that sadness, like all things, is not permanent. It comes, it teaches, and it goes. In the quiet wisdom of the Buddha, sadness is not a punishment but a messenger, a sign that somewhere within us there is an attachment, a resistance, or a forgotten truth that needs to be understood. In this teaching, we will explore 7 powerful lessons that can transform the way you see sadness, so that even when it arises, it no longer controls you. If you are listening to this while feeling down, let these words enter your heart, and you may discover that peace has always been closer than you thought. 1. Sadness is not you. The first and most important lesson is to realize that sadness does not define who you are, even though in difficult moments it may feel as if it does. Many people carry sadness like a label saying, "I am sad," as though it has become their permanent identity. But Buddhism teaches us that emotions are not who we are. They are temporary states of mind that come and go, like visitors who enter and eventually leave. Imagine the sky on a stormy day. The clouds may be thick and heavy, the rain may pour down and thunder may roar, but no matter how intense the storm is, the sky itself is never harmed. It remains vast, open, and unchanged. In the same way, sadness may appear and cover your sense of joy for a time, but it never destroys the deeper essence of who you are. Your true nature is like the sky, untouched, limitless, and clear. This is why meditation is such a powerful practice in Buddhism. When you sit in silence and watch your thoughts and emotions, you begin to notice something extraordinary. You are not the sadness, you are the observer of it. You notice how it arises, how it feels heavy in your body, how it changes your breathing, how it makes your thoughts darker, and how it tries to convince you that it is permanent. But in that moment of noticing, you are no longer drowning in sadness. You are watching it. You are the one who is aware, and awareness is always greater than the emotion itself. Think of sadness as a guest who knocks on your door. At first, you may feel overwhelmed, thinking it has come to stay forever. But when you remember that you are the homeowner and sadness is only the guest, the balance of power shifts. You no longer feel controlled by the emotion. You realize you have the choice to let it in, to sit with it, to learn from it, and then, when the time is right, to allow it to leave. This shift in perspective is life-changing, because the moment you stop saying, "I am sadness," and instead say, "I am experiencing sadness," you take back your freedom. When you create that distance between yourself and the emotion, you discover that sadness is not your master. It is not your permanent identity. It is not your destiny. It is only an experience passing through your awareness. In that space of recognition, there is incredible freedom. You realize you can observe sadness without drowning in it. You can learn from it without being consumed, and you can let it go when it has served its purpose. Sadness then transforms from being a prison into being a teacher. And with this understanding, you begin to live with a lighter heart, knowing that no matter how strong the storm may seem, the sky of your true self remains clear and untouched. 2. Everything rises and falls. The second lesson is one of the deepest truths in Buddhism, impermanence. The Buddha called it anicca, the understanding that everything in this life is always changing. Nothing stays the same forever, not your happiness, not your pain, not even your sadness. Yet when we feel sad, we forget this truth. We believe that the heaviness in our heart will never leave, that the emptiness we feel will remain with us always. This belief is what makes sadness so painful. It convinces us that it will last forever. But if you look closely at your own life, you will see that every emotion, every situation, and every season has always changed. Nothing has remained exactly as it was. The sadness you felt years ago is no longer here. The struggles you thought you would never overcome eventually passed. Even moments of joy, no matter how bright, also changed. This is the nature of life. It rises and falls like waves in the ocean. Think of the ocean on a stormy day. The waves may rise high, crashing with great force, and in that moment it may feel like the storm will never end. But with time, the winds soften, the waves calm, and the sea returns to stillness. Your sadness works in the same way. It may feel overwhelming, it may seem endless, but it is part of a larger rhythm of life that is always moving, always changing. Just as the night cannot stop the dawn from coming, sadness cannot stop joy from returning. When you begin to truly understand impermanence, sadness loses much of its power over you. Instead of believing, "I will always feel this way," you begin to think, "This too shall pass." That one shift in thinking gives you patience and strength. It allows you to sit with sadness without fear, because you know it is only temporary. This is why in Buddhist teachings, people are reminded to see life like a river. The river flows, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, but it never stays the same. If you sit by the river long enough, you will see new water flowing every moment. Your emotions are the same, ever-changing, never fixed. Impermanence also teaches us gratitude. Because nothing lasts forever, every moment is precious. The laughter of a loved one, the warmth of the sun, the sound of rain on your window. These are fleeting gifts. When you realize they will not last forever, you treasure them more deeply. The same applies even to sadness. When you are sad, you may not see it as a gift, but if you watch carefully, you may notice that sadness teaches you patience, resilience, and compassion for others. And then, when it fades, it leaves behind wisdom you would never have gained without it. So when sadness comes, remember the law of impermanence. Remind yourself, this is just a passing cloud. It cannot stay forever. Hold on to this truth, and you will find that even in your darkest moments, there is a quiet hope. The rain will stop, the storm will end, and the sun, which has never truly disappeared, will shine again. 3. Do not resist what you feel. The third lesson is to understand that resisting your emotions only strengthens them. When sadness arises, our natural instinct is to push it away, to deny it, or to bury it under distractions. We may try to drown it in endless scrolling on our phones, in constant busyness, or even in unhealthy habits, all in an attempt to avoid feeling what is inside us. But the more we run from sadness, the stronger it becomes. It waits for us quietly, and when we are alone, it returns with even greater intensity. Buddhism teaches a very different approach. Instead of resisting sadness, we are invited to accept it, to sit with it, and to allow it to be what it is without judgment. Imagine sadness as a child who is crying. If you scold the child, if you tell them to stop crying, or if you try to shut the door on them, the crying only becomes louder and more painful. But if you sit down, open your arms, and allow the child to rest against your chest, the crying slowly softens. Sadness works in the same way. It is not your enemy. It is a part of your human experience, asking to be acknowledged. When you stop running and instead say to yourself, "It's okay to feel this. I can sit with it," the weight of sadness begins to lift. This practice is called mindful acceptance. You notice where sadness is in your body, perhaps a heaviness in your chest, a tightness in your throat, or a sinking feeling in your stomach. You breathe into those places, acknowledging the emotion without judgment. Instead of saying, "I should not feel sad," you say, "This is sadness. It is here, and I will allow it to be." By allowing yourself to feel fully, You give sadness permission to move through you rather than become stuck inside you. It is like opening a window in a dark room. The air that felt suffocating begins to circulate, and slowly light begins to enter. Resisting sadness is like trying to hold a beach ball under water. You may succeed for a short while, but eventually the ball will rise back up with force. In the same way, when you push sadness down, it often resurfaces at unexpected times, sometimes through anger, sometimes through exhaustion, and sometimes through an overwhelming sense of emptiness. But when you stop fighting it, when you let it rise to the surface naturally, you release its power. Buddhism teaches that every emotion has a lesson to offer. Sadness may be pointing to something you need to let go of, or reminding you of what you value most, or showing you the depth of your love for someone or something. If you reject it, you miss the lesson. But if you sit with it, if you listen carefully, you gain wisdom. And once the wisdom is received, the sadness no longer needs to remain. So do not resist what you feel. Allow it. Hold it with gentleness, like you would hold a fragile bird in your hands. The moment you stop fighting your sadness, you stop giving it power over you. And in that acceptance, you discover something beautiful, that your heart is strong enough to feel pain and still remain open, strong enough to face sadness and still move forward. Acceptance does not trap you in sadness. It sets you free. 4. Suffering comes from attachment. The fourth lesson brings us to the very root of why sadness can feel so heavy and unshakable. In Buddhism, the Buddha taught that much of our suffering comes from attachment, our tendency to cling tightly to people, to possessions, to expectations, and to the way we think life should unfold. When reality does not align with our desires, sadness arises. This does not mean love or caring for others is wrong. Rather, it means that when we hold too tightly, when we demand permanence in a world that is ever-changing, we create suffering for ourselves. Imagine holding a handful of sand. If you squeeze your fist tightly, the sand slips quickly through your fingers, no matter how much you try to hold on. But if you open your hand and allow the sand to rest gently on your palm, it stays longer and feels lighter. This is the difference between attachment and letting go. When you cling to someone or something with fear of losing it, you suffer the pain of that fear every day. But when you allow yourself to love without clinging, when you care without needing to control, you experience freedom. Sadness often grows when we attach our happiness to conditions outside ourselves. We think, I will only be happy if this person stays with me, if my plans succeed, if life gives me what I expect. But life is not bound to our conditions. It moves according to its own rhythm. When we fight against this truth, we suffer. But when we accept that everything changes, we begin to loosen our grip. We begin to understand that people may come and go, successes may rise and fall, and situations may shift, but our inner peace does not have to depend on these fluctuations. This does not mean you must stop loving, caring, or enjoying the beauty of life. In fact, it means you can love more deeply because your love is no longer bound by fear. You can enjoy moments fully because you are no longer trying to freeze them in time. You can appreciate people as they are without needing to control who they become. Letting go is not about rejection. It is about freedom. It is about allowing life to flow instead of trying to trap it in place. Think of a tree in autumn. The leaves change color and eventually fall, and the tree does not cling to them. It does not cry over what is lost. It trusts the process, knowing that letting go is part of the cycle of life, and because the tree lets go, it makes space for new growth in spring. In the same way, when you loosen your attachments, you make space for new joys, new wisdom, and new beginnings to enter your life. Sadness becomes lighter because you are no longer chained to the illusion of permanence. So when sadness arises, ask yourself, what am I holding on to so tightly that it is causing me pain? It might be a memory of the past, an expectation of the future, or a picture of how things should be. Recognize that this clinging is the true source of your suffering. When you gently loosen your grip, when you breathe deeply and allow life to unfold without forcing it, sadness begins to soften. You realize that freedom does not come from controlling life, it comes from flowing with it. And in that flow, peace arises naturally. 5. Practice the present moment. One of the most profound truths in Buddhism is that suffering does not come from the present moment itself. It comes from our mind's tendency to wander into the past or leap ahead into the future. Sadness is often rooted in memory or anticipation. We replay old wounds in our minds, asking ourselves why things happened the way they did, or imagining how life could have been different if only we had made another choice. Or we look forward with anxiety, worrying about what might go wrong, fearing losses that have not yet arrived, or doubting our ability to face the future. This endless movement of the mind, always looking backward or forward, keeps us from experiencing the only place where life truly exists, the present moment. The Buddha taught mindfulness as the path to freedom from this cycle. To practice mindfulness is to train the mind to rest in the here and now, without being dragged into the illusions of yesterday or tomorrow. In the present, sadness loses its power. Think about it carefully. If you strip away the stories of the past and the fears of the future, what is left in this very moment? Often, it is something very simple. Your breath moving in and out, the weight of your body on the ground, the sound of life around you. In that simplicity, there is peace. But the mind resists this stillness because it is used to constant noise. When sadness visits, the mind clings to it and builds a narrative around it. I am sad because of what happened years ago. I will never recover from this loss. The future will always be empty for me. These are not truths. They are stories the mind creates. Yet when you stop and anchor yourself in the present, you realize that right now, in this very breath, you are alive. The heart is beating, the lungs are breathing, and in this moment, you are safe. One of the simplest practices is to focus on your breathing. In Buddhism, this is known as anapanasati, the mindfulness of breath. Close your eyes, inhale deeply, and notice the sensation of air entering your nostrils, filling your chest, and expanding your belly. Exhale slowly, and feel the release as the breath leaves your body. With each inhale and exhale, you remind yourself, this is now. This is real. The mind will wander, back to your sadness, back to your worries, but gently, kindly, you bring it back to the breath. Each time you do this, you are training your mind to stay present, like a bird learning to rest on the branch instead of flying endlessly from tree to tree. Sadness cannot survive in the present because the present is always new. The past is gone and the future has not arrived. The present moment is like a flowing river. You can step into it, but the water you touch is never the same. If you bring your awareness fully into this flow, sadness loses its grip because it cannot anchor itself in something that is constantly changing. Consider a simple example. Imagine you are drinking a cup of tea. Normally, when sadness clouds the mind, you may drink it without noticing, your thoughts elsewhere, consumed by pain. But if you pause and bring your full attention to the warmth of the cup in your hands, the aroma rising with the steam, the taste of the tea touching your tongue, you begin to experience life directly. In that moment, you are not drowning in stories, you are living. This is the gift of mindfulness. It brings you back to life as it is, not as your mind tells you it should be. The practice of the present moment is also an antidote to overthinking. When we overthink, we feed sadness with endless questions. Why did this happen to me? What if things never get better? What will I do if I lose everything? But none of these questions exist in the now. They belong to the imagination, not reality. By returning to the present, you take away the fuel that keeps sadness burning. Another powerful practice in Buddhism is walking meditation. As you walk slowly, focus on the movement of your feet touching the ground. With each step, silently say to yourself, I am here. I am present. Feel the rhythm of your body moving in harmony with your breath. This simple act transforms walking from an unconscious habit into a doorway to peace. When sadness feels overwhelming, walking mindfully even for 10 minutes can remind you that you are not trapped in your thoughts. You are alive in this very moment. Mindfulness also teaches us that the present is not something to escape from, but something to embrace fully, even if it contains sadness. If you are sad, acknowledge it with awareness. This is sadness. I see it. I feel it. And it is part of this moment. When you name the emotion without judgment, you stop fighting it. You simply allow it to exist as part of the now, and strangely, in that allowance, the heaviness begins to lighten. The pain does not vanish instantly, but it becomes softer, more bearable, because you are no longer lost in it, you are observing it. Life itself becomes richer when you live in the present moment. You begin to notice small details you once overlooked: the colors of the sky at dusk, the laughter of a child, the way the wind brushes against your skin. These are moments that sadness often blinds us from seeing. But when you open your awareness, you realize that life is filled with countless gifts, and sadness, while real, is only one part of the vast tapestry of existence. So when sadness tries to pull you into the past or push you into the future, pause, breathe, come back to the present. Remind yourself, this is where life is. This is where peace is. The practice of the present moment does not mean sadness will never arise again, but it ensures that sadness will never completely control you. It teaches you that peace is not something far away, waiting to be discovered someday. It is already here, hidden beneath the layers of your restless mind, waiting to be uncovered in this very breath, in this very step, in this very moment. 6. Transform pain into compassion. One of the most beautiful and healing teachings of Buddhism is that our own suffering can become the seed of compassion. When sadness visits, most people see it as an enemy, as something that only isolates and weakens them. But Buddhism invites us to look at sadness in a different way. Instead of asking, "Why me?" we are encouraged to ask, "What can this sadness teach me? How can I use it to grow?" The answer lies in compassion, compassion for ourselves and compassion for all beings who suffer. When you feel sadness deeply, you are given an opportunity to understand the suffering of others in a way that you could never do if you had never tasted pain yourself. If you had lived only in comfort, if you had never known heartbreak, loss, or despair, then the cries of the world might not touch you. But because you know what sadness feels like, you can look into the eyes of another person who is hurting and silently say, "I understand. I have been there too." This is the root of compassion, shared humanity, born from the awareness that suffering is not yours alone, but something universal that connects all living beings. The Buddha taught metta bhavana, the cultivation of loving kindness. It begins with wishing well for yourself. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. May I find peace. This is not selfish. It is essential. Too often, when sadness strikes, we become our own harshest critics. We tell ourselves we are weak, that we should be stronger, that we should not feel this way. But such self-judgment only deepens suffering. Compassion teaches us to speak to ourselves with gentleness, as if we were speaking to a dear friend. When you are sad, instead of saying, "Why can't I handle this?" say, "It's okay to feel this. I am human, and I am allowed to hurt. May I find peace." This simple shift in inner dialogue is powerful because it stops the cycle of self-criticism and replaces it with self-kindness. Once you cultivate compassion for yourself, you can begin extending it outward. When you feel the heaviness of sadness, pause and remember that countless others in the world feel the same right now. Somewhere, another human is grieving a loss, another is lying awake in loneliness, another is crying quietly because they do not know how to carry their burdens. When you realize this, your sadness transforms from isolation into connection. You are no longer suffering alone. You are part of the vast, shared experience of humanity. From this awareness, you can silently send thoughts of compassion outward. May all beings who are sad find comfort. May all who are lost find their way. May all who suffer find peace. This practice does not erase your sadness instantly, but it changes the way you hold it. Instead of being crushed beneath it, you use it as a bridge to love. And love, when practiced sincerely, softens the edges of pain. Imagine your sadness as a flame. If you keep it to yourself, it burns you alone. But if you use that flame to light candles of compassion for others, the room fills with light instead of heat. In the same way, your sadness can become the very force that illuminates your heart and brings warmth to others. Consider this. The greatest healers, teachers, and guides in the world are often those who have suffered deeply themselves. Their wisdom and compassion come not from theory, but from lived experience. They know what it means to hurt, and because of that, they have the ability to hold others in their pain with patience and love. Your sadness, too, can be transformed into a source of strength, not because it disappears, but because it deepens your capacity to love. Buddhism also teaches the practice of Tonglen in Tibetan tradition, which means sending and receiving. When you breathe in, you imagine taking in the suffering of the world, including your own, as a dark cloud. And when you breathe out, you imagine sending peace, light, and healing to all beings. At first, this practice may feel strange or even overwhelming, but with time, it trains your heart to respond to suffering with love rather than fear. It teaches you that pain does not need to close your heart. It can open it wider than ever before. Transforming pain into compassion also means shifting the way you see your struggles. Instead of seeing them as punishment, you see them as teachers. Sadness teaches you patience. Loss teaches you the value of presence. Loneliness teaches you the importance of connection. Every wound, when met with awareness, becomes a doorway to greater understanding. And that understanding naturally blossoms into compassion. You can also practice compassion in action. When you are sad, one of the most healing things you can do is to step outside yourself and serve others. Call someone who may need comfort. Offer kindness to a stranger. Volunteer your time or simply smile at someone who looks weary. These small acts of compassion not only help others, but also remind you of your own strength. They show you that even in sadness, you still have something beautiful to give. And when you give from the heart, sadness begins to loosen its grip. Remember, compassion is not about ignoring your pain. It is about embracing it and allowing it to connect you with others. It is about seeing sadness not as a wall, but as a bridge. Every time you feel sorrow, remind yourself that you are not alone in it. Every tear you shed echoes in the hearts of countless others. Use that awareness to open your heart wider, not close it. Say to yourself, because I know sadness, I will choose kindness. Because I have suffered, I will choose to love. In this way, sadness ceases to be an enemy and becomes a teacher. It becomes a path to wisdom, empathy, and compassion. And as compassion grows, sadness naturally begins to lose its sharpness. It becomes softer, lighter, more manageable, because it has been transformed into love. That is the power of compassion. It takes pain and turns it into something beautiful, something that not only heals you, but also touches the world around you. Choose gratitude over sadness. Gratitude is one of the most powerful medicines for the human heart, yet when sadness takes hold, it is often the first thing we forget. When life feels heavy, the mind tends to fixate on what is missing, what has gone wrong, or what has been lost. It becomes like a lens that only sees emptiness. But Buddhism teaches that the lens itself can be changed. The way we see the world is not fixed. It can be trained. Gratitude is that training. It shifts your focus from absence to presence, from lack to abundance, and from despair to appreciation. And in doing so, it weakens the power of sadness until it no longer dominates your inner world. Think about this. Sadness says, "Look at what I don't have. Look at what I have lost." Gratitude says, "Look at what I still have. Look at what remains." Sadness narrows your vision until you see only suffering, while gratitude opens your vision until you see blessings that were always there but overlooked. It is not that gratitude denies the reality of sadness. Pain still exists, losses are still real, but it balances the scale. It prevents you from being swallowed whole by sorrow, by reminding you that even in darkness, light continues to shine. In Buddhism, mindfulness and gratitude are deeply connected. When you are mindful of the present moment, you begin to notice the small gifts of life. The breath moving through your body, the food that nourishes you, the roof that shelters you, the people who care about you, and even the opportunities hidden in your struggles. Every moment carries something you can appreciate, but when the mind is clouded by sadness, it tends to overlook these treasures. Gratitude is like polishing a dusty mirror. It allows you to see clearly again what has always been there. Imagine waking up in the morning. Sadness may tell you, another day to struggle, another day of pain. But gratitude invites you to notice the miracle of simply waking up, of your heart beating, of your lungs breathing without effort, of the chance to live another day and perhaps grow stronger. When you drink a glass of water, sadness may not notice it at all, but gratitude reminds you that clean water is a blessing denied to millions. When you see the sky, sadness may ignore its beauty, but gratitude reminds you that the colors of dawn and dusk are gifts freely given. Gratitude turns ordinary things into sacred experiences. One powerful practice is keeping a gratitude journal. Each day, write down 3 things you are thankful for. They do not have to be grand or extraordinary. Sometimes the smallest details carry the most weight. It might be a kind word from a friend, the comfort of your bed after a long day, or the quiet moment you shared with yourself in peace. At first, your mind may resist. It may say, "There is nothing to be grateful for. Everything is wrong." But if you continue the practice, even on difficult days, your mind slowly learns to see blessings where it once saw nothing. Gratitude becomes a habit, and once it is a habit, sadness has less space to take root. Gratitude also transforms the way we see challenges. In Buddhist teaching, obstacles are not punishments, they are opportunities for growth. When you shift your perspective, even painful experiences can become teachers. For example, the sadness of losing someone may also teach you to cherish the people who remain. The struggle of failure may teach you resilience and humility. The weight of loneliness may teach you to connect with yourself more deeply. Gratitude does not erase the pain of these experiences, but it allows you to see the hidden gift within them. Consider the story of a monk who was asked how he remained so peaceful despite hardships. He replied, "Each day I give thanks, not because life is always easy, but because every day gives me another chance to learn patience, compassion, and wisdom." This is the essence of gratitude. It does not demand that life be perfect before you are thankful. Instead, it invites you to be thankful for the lessons and blessings that come, even through imperfection. Another way gratitude heals sadness is by reconnecting you to others. When you are sad, you may feel isolated, as if the world has turned its back on you. But when you practice gratitude, you begin to see how many invisible hands support your life. The farmer who grew your food, the workers who built your home, the teachers who shared their knowledge, the strangers who smiled at you in passing, all of them contribute to your existence in ways you may never fully know. Realizing this interconnection fills your heart with appreciation and reduces the sense of isolation that sadness brings. You begin to feel less alone and more connected to the fabric of life itself. Gratitude also has a direct effect on the body and mind. Modern science confirms what Buddhist wisdom has always known. Gratitude calms the nervous system, lowers stress, and increases feelings of happiness. When you dwell on what is missing, your body responds with tension and anxiety. But when you dwell on what is present and good, your body softens, your breath deepens, and your heart feels lighter. Gratitude literally rewires the mind to notice positivity, making it harder for sadness to dominate. It is important to understand that gratitude is not about forcing yourself to be cheerful or denying your pain. It is not about pretending everything is fine when it is not. True gratitude lives alongside sadness. It acknowledges the pain but refuses to let the pain be the only story. For example, you might say, "I am sad about my loss, but I am grateful for the time I had with the person I loved." Or, "I am sad that things did not go as planned, but I am grateful for the lessons I learned along the way." In this way, gratitude expands your perspective. It teaches you that even when one door closes, others remain open. A beautiful meditation practice is to sit quietly, close your eyes, and bring to mind one thing you are grateful for. Let it fill your awareness. Picture it clearly, feel it deeply, and breathe into that sense of appreciation. Then slowly expand your gratitude outward, to your body, to your loved ones, to nature, to the universe itself. With each breath, you are training your heart to see abundance instead of lack. When practiced regularly, this meditation changes the emotional climate of your life. Sadness may still appear, but it will no longer consume you, because gratitude keeps your heart rooted in appreciation. In Buddhism, gratitude is also linked to humility. When you are grateful, you recognize that much of what you enjoy in life is not solely the result of your own effort, but the result of countless causes and conditions. This awareness softens pride and deepens respect for life. Instead of feeling entitled or bitter when things do not go your way, you feel thankful for the many things that do. And this humility brings peace. So when sadness weighs heavily on you, remember to choose gratitude. Begin small if you must. Be grateful for your breath, for your heartbeat, for the chance to live another day. Let gratitude grow slowly, like a seed watered each day, until it blossoms into a way of seeing the world. Over time, you will notice that sadness still comes, but it no longer has the same power, because gratitude gives you another place to stand. Sadness says, "Everything is wrong." Gratitude whispers, "Not everything. There is still much that is right." And when you listen to gratitude, sadness begins to dissolve, not because life is suddenly perfect, but because your heart has learned to see the light even in the midst of darkness. Choosing gratitude over sadness is not a one-time act. It is a daily practice, a lifelong journey. But the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Gratitude slowly reshapes the way you see yourself, others, and the world. It teaches you to live not in constant longing for what is absent, but in deep appreciation for what is present. And in that appreciation, you discover a truth that sadness tried to hide from you all along, that life, even with its imperfections, is still filled with beauty, wonder, and reasons to smile. The stillness within is your true home. After all the lessons we have explored, recognizing that sadness is not who you are, remembering that everything rises and falls, learning not to resist emotions, letting go of attachments, returning to the present, transforming pain into compassion, and choosing gratitude, there is one more truth that Buddhism points us toward, a truth that ties them all together. It is the understanding that beyond every passing emotion, beyond every thought, beyond every wave of joy or sadness, there exists a deeper stillness within you. This stillness is not disturbed by storms, it is not broken by loss, and it is not weakened by despair. It is your true home, the place where peace has always been waiting. Most of the time, we live on the surface of our minds, caught in the endless waves of thoughts and emotions. When sadness rises, we are pulled up and down by it, as though we are powerless in the ocean of our feelings. But Buddhism teaches us that we are not only the waves, we are also the ocean itself. Beneath the surface, no matter how wild the waters may appear, the depths of the ocean remain calm and unmoved. In the same way, your true nature, what Buddhism calls your Buddha nature, is always still, always present, always untouched by temporary storms. The challenge is that we forget this. We identify too strongly with what moves on the surface. We say, I am this sadness, I am this fear, I am this pain. But the truth is that you are far more than these passing states. You are the awareness that notices them, the vast openness in which they appear. When you learn to rest in that awareness, sadness loses its power. It may still come, but it no longer defines you, because you know the stillness behind it is untouched. This is why meditation is central in Buddhist practice. Meditation is not about escaping life or silencing the mind by force. It is about sinking beneath the surface and reconnecting with the stillness that is always there. When you sit quietly, focus on your breath, and let your thoughts come and go without clinging, you begin to notice glimpses of this inner calm. At first, it may last only a few seconds before the mind pulls you back into noise. But with time, you realize that the stillness is never gone. It is simply hidden beneath layers of thought and emotion. Imagine a lake on a windy day. The surface ripples and breaks, and you cannot see your reflection clearly. But if the wind dies down, the water becomes still, and suddenly the lake reflects the sky with perfect clarity. Your mind is the same. When stirred by sadness, anger, or worry, the surface is chaotic. But as you practice stillness, the turbulence settles, and you begin to see clearly again. That clarity reveals who you really are, something deeper than sadness, something unshaken and free. When sadness feels unbearable, returning to this stillness can be life-changing. Instead of asking, "How can I get rid of this sadness?" you ask, "Who is it that is aware of this sadness?" The moment you shift your focus from the sadness itself to the awareness behind it, you step out of identification. You see that the awareness is always calm, always steady. This is the part of you that has been present through every high and low of your life. Think back. You were aware when you were joyful. You were aware when you were afraid. You were aware when you were sad. And you are aware now. That awareness has never been broken, never been diminished by what it has witnessed. That awareness is your true self. Buddhism teaches that this awareness is beyond birth and death, beyond gain and loss. It is eternal, unchanging, and free. When you touch it, even for a moment, sadness no longer has the same weight, because you realize it is only something passing through, not the core of your being. It is like a cloud passing in front of the sun. The cloud may cover the light for a while, but the sun has never stopped shining. Your stillness is that sun, constant, radiant, and untouchable. To deepen this realization, Buddhist teachers often encourage contemplative meditation. Sit quietly and watch your thoughts and emotions as if they were clouds drifting across the sky. Do not chase them, do not push them away, simply observe. Notice how each thought arises, stays for a while, and then dissolves. Notice how each emotion follows the same pattern. Through this practice, you begin to see the truth. Everything is temporary, but the awareness itself does not come and go. It remains as the silent witness, spacious and free. The more you rest in this awareness, the less power sadness has over you. This stillness also teaches us how to live more fully. When you are anchored in awareness, you can experience sadness without fear, joy without clinging, and life without constant struggle. You do not need to escape emotions. You simply see them for what they are, passing movements within a vast, unchanging space. In that space, there is incredible freedom. You are no longer a prisoner of moods, no longer defined by your circumstances. You can walk through life with a calm mind and an open heart, because you know that at your core, you are already whole. Think of the great Buddhist masters who radiate peace, even in the face of suffering. Their secret is not that they never feel sadness or pain. It is that they have learned to rest in the stillness beyond those feelings. They know that storms may shake the branches of a tree, but the roots remain grounded. In the same way, your awareness, the stillness within you, is your root. When you rest there, nothing can uproot you. Transforming sadness through stillness does not mean you will never feel sad again. Emotions will continue to rise and fall as long as you are alive. But the difference is that sadness will no longer control you. It will no longer define your identity or dictate your choices. Instead, you will be able to meet sadness with gentleness, knowing it is only a passing visitor. You will know how to sit with it, learn from it, and release it, all while staying connected to the calm presence within you. This stillness is your true home. No matter where you go, no matter what you face, it is always with you. You do not need to earn it, you do not need to create it, and you cannot lose it. You only need to remember it. And every time you return to it, through meditation, through mindfulness, through simply pausing and breathing, you strengthen your connection to it. With time, it becomes the place you naturally return to when sadness arises. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and remind yourself, I am not this sadness. I am the stillness behind it. I am the awareness that sees it. I am the sky, not the cloud. Say it again and again until you feel the truth of it in your bones. The sadness may remain for a while, but it will no longer feel like a prison. Instead, it will be like rain falling gently on the surface of the vast, unshaken ocean of your being. And in that realization, you will discover a peace that sadness can never touch. This is the ultimate teaching of Buddhism, not that life will give you no pain, but that within you there is a place untouched by pain, a place of silence, of freedom, of unshakable peace. The more you learn to rest there, the more you will see that sadness is not the end of your story. It is only a passing chapter in a much greater truth, that who you really are is vast, timeless, and free. Freedom comes when you stop clinging to control. One of the greatest sources of sadness is the human desire to control life. We want things to go our way, we want outcomes to match our expectations, and we want certainty in a world that is constantly shifting. We hold on to this illusion of control as if it is the only way to protect ourselves from suffering, but the truth is the opposite. The more tightly we cling, the more deeply we suffer. Buddhism teaches that much of our sadness is not caused by what happens in life, but by our refusal to accept what happens. The river of life flows endlessly, yet instead of floating with it, we try to dam it, direct it, or freeze it in place. And when the river refuses to obey us, sadness overwhelms us. Think of the times you felt most broken inside. Was it not often because life refused to follow the script you had written in your mind? You expected someone to stay, but they left. You worked hard for a goal, but it slipped away. You dreamed of certainty, but uncertainty arrived instead. Each of these moments reveals the truth. We do not suffer only because things change. We suffer because we resist change. We cling to the fantasy that life should bend to our will, and when it does not, sadness becomes our shadow. The Buddha's teaching reminds us of a radical but liberating truth. Control is an illusion. We cannot stop the seasons from shifting. We cannot stop people from changing. We cannot stop time from moving forward. We cannot even stop our own thoughts from arising or our own body from aging. The attempt to control all this is like trying to hold water in your fists. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. The more we fight against the natural flow of life, the more pain we create for ourselves. Yet within this truth lies great freedom. If control is an illusion, then letting go of control is the path to peace. Imagine for a moment floating on your back in a river. If you thrash, trying to fight the current, you exhaust yourself, you sink, you drown in struggle. But if you release the need to control, if you simply trust the water to carry you, you float. Life is that river. The current is strong. It moves in directions we do not always understand, but when we surrender to it, instead of resisting, we discover a surprising sense of ease. Sadness softens, because sadness was never about the current itself. It was about our struggle against it. Letting go of control does not mean giving up responsibility or living without intention. It means living wisely, doing what you can, but releasing attachment to outcomes. The Buddha often taught the importance of right effort, putting energy into what is wholesome and meaningful, but he never promised that outcomes would always align with our desires. What matters is the effort, not the result. If we plant seeds of kindness, wisdom, and patience, life will grow according to its own rhythm. Some seeds will blossom quickly, others will take years, and some may not grow at all. But peace comes when we remember that our role is to plant, not to command the harvest. This lesson is especially important when facing sadness. Often sadness deepens when we replay the past with thoughts like, "If only I had done this differently," or when we face the future with fear, thinking, "What if things don't go the way I want?" Both are attempts to control what is outside of our reach. The past cannot be rewritten, and the future cannot be perfectly predicted. The only place where your choice has power is in this moment. You can choose how to respond now. You can choose patience, kindness, and awareness now. You can choose to let go now. And when you choose this, you release yourself from the burden of trying to control what cannot be controlled. Letting go of control is also a lesson in trust. Trust not in a perfect future, but in the unfolding of life itself. Trust that even when things do not go your way, they may still carry lessons and opportunities that you cannot yet see. Think of times in your past when something you thought was a disaster later revealed itself as a blessing. Perhaps a door that closed made room for a better one to open. Perhaps a failure humbled you and prepared you for deeper success. Perhaps a loss taught you compassion that now allows you to comfort others. Life has a way of weaving meaning even through pain, but we can only see it when we release the demand that things must always go according to our plan. In Buddhist practice, surrender is not weakness. It is wisdom. Weakness is fighting endlessly against the unchangeable. Wisdom is bowing to reality and saying, "This is how it is. I cannot stop the storm, but I can choose how I stand in it." When you stop clinging to control, sadness transforms into something lighter, because you are no longer dragging the weight of impossible expectations. You allow life to be as it is, and you allow yourself to flow with it. Consider a tree in the midst of strong winds. If the tree tries to resist, if it remains stiff and unyielding, it may break. But if it bends with the wind, if it sways and flows, it survives. Life is the same. Sadness often breaks us when we remain rigid, demanding that things stay the way we want. But when we bend, when we surrender, when we trust the rhythm of life, we discover resilience. We may not control the wind, but we can control how we dance with it. There is also great compassion in letting go of control, because much of our sadness comes from trying to control others, their choices, their feelings, their paths. We suffer when people do not love us the way we hoped, when they change in ways we cannot accept, when they leave despite our pleas. But no matter how much we wish to, we cannot control the hearts of others. Each being walks their own path, shaped by their own causes and conditions. To demand that someone fit into our picture of how life should be is to set ourselves up for endless disappointment. But when we release that demand, when we allow people to be as they are, our love becomes freer, purer, less bound by fear. Sadness lessens because our hearts are no longer chained by the need to control what is not ours to hold. Letting go is not easy. It feels like stepping into the unknown, like walking without ground beneath your feet. But the truth is that control was never the ground. It was always an illusion. The real ground, the true stability, comes from acceptance. It comes from knowing that life cannot always be shaped by your hands, but your heart can remain steady regardless. The storm may rage, but you can breathe, you can be present, you can remain open. That is the freedom Buddhism speaks of, the freedom that comes not from controlling life, but from no longer needing to. So when sadness grips you, pause and ask, what am I trying to control that is beyond my reach? Am I trying to rewrite the past? Am I trying to dictate the future? Am I trying to hold on to someone who is changing? Am I trying to freeze life in place? Whatever the answer, let it go. Breathe deeply and whisper to yourself, I release this. I allow life to flow. Each time you do this, the weight of sadness lightens, because sadness cannot survive in a heart that no longer demands control. This is the lesson of freedom. You do not need to force life to match your expectations to be at peace. You only need to release the expectations themselves. When you stop clinging to control, you discover something extraordinary. You discover that peace has been with you all along, waiting behind the noise of your demands. You discover that sadness was not an eternal truth, but only the shadow of resistance. And when resistance fades, what remains is the vast openness of life itself, ever-changing, unpredictable, yet profoundly beautiful. Joy is found in simplicity, not in endless seeking. One of the deepest traps that leads to sadness is the constant pursuit of something more. Human beings often believe that happiness lies just beyond the next achievement, the next possession, the next relationship, or the next milestone. We say to ourselves, once I get this, then I'll finally be happy. Once life looks like that, then I'll finally feel at peace. But Buddhism teaches that this endless seeking is itself the source of suffering. It creates a cycle where happiness is always postponed, always dependent on conditions outside ourselves, always somewhere in the future. And because the future never arrives in the way we imagine, sadness fills the gap. Think about your own life. How many times did you believe that one event, one success, or one person would finally complete you? Perhaps you thought, if I get this job, then my sadness will end. If I fall in love, then I'll finally feel whole. If I buy this or achieve that, then my life will finally make sense. And maybe for a short while, after reaching those goals, you did feel a spark of joy. But soon the spark faded, and the mind found a new desire, a new condition, a new reason to postpone peace. This is the wheel of suffering the Buddha spoke of, the endless craving that keeps us running without rest, always chasing and never arriving. The truth is that lasting joy does not come from more, it comes from less. It comes not from adding to your life, but from simplifying, from learning to appreciate what is already here. Buddhism calls this santuti, or contentment. To practice contentment is to say, this moment is enough, this breath is enough, this life, as it is, holds everything I need to be at peace. When you learn this, sadness loses its power, because sadness feeds on the belief that something essential is missing from your life. Contentment reveals that nothing is missing at all. Look at nature for guidance. The bird does not need a golden cage to sing. The flower does not demand a palace to bloom. The river does not need permission to flow. Each simply lives its nature fully, and in doing so, there is peace. Humans, on the other hand, often complicate life with endless desires, forgetting that the most precious things, air, water, sunlight, kindness, presence, are already within reach. When you strip away the noise of seeking, when you pause and notice the beauty of the ordinary, joy naturally arises. This does not mean you should not have goals or dreams. It means you should not tie your happiness to them. You can work toward growth, but you must also remember that peace is available now, not only later. If you cannot find contentment in this moment, you will not find it in the next, because the habit of craving will follow you wherever you go. But if you learn to see the value of this breath, this day, this small gift of life as it is, then joy becomes your constant companion, and sadness cannot steal it from you. Simplicity also teaches us to let go of the unnecessary burdens we carry. How much sadness in your life comes not from what is real, but from the weight of comparisons, judgments, and expectations you place on yourself. We look at others and think, they have more than me, they are happier than me, they are ahead of me. These comparisons create endless dissatisfaction. But Buddhism reminds us that comparison is a thief. Your life is your own path. Your journey cannot be measured against anyone else's. When you stop comparing, when you simplify your focus to your own growth, sadness begins to fade because you are no longer fighting battles that were never yours to fight. Living simply also means letting go of the mental clutter that fills the mind. Sadness thrives when the mind is noisy, when it is full of what-ifs, if-onlys, and why me. But when you simplify your thoughts, when you return to basics, your breath, your steps, your gratitude, sadness loses its grip. You realize that peace is not hidden in distant achievements, but in the ordinary moments you once overlooked. The smile of a loved one, the sound of rain on the roof, the quiet strength of sitting alone and feeling your own heartbeat. These are not small things, they are everything. Another aspect of simplicity is living in alignment with your values rather than with society's demands. Much of our sadness comes from chasing after what others tell us we should want, status, wealth, recognition, rather than listening to what our own heart truly needs. When you live out of alignment, you may achieve much but still feel empty. But when you simplify your life to what truly matters, kindness, mindfulness, love, presence, you find a joy that is unshakable because it is authentic. Buddhist monks embody this principle. They live with few possessions, simple meals, and quiet routines. Yet when you meet them, you often find a radiance of joy that seems to outshine all worldly success. Why? Because their joy does not come from external things. It comes from inner freedom. It comes from knowing that peace is found not in acquiring, but in being, not in controlling, but in allowing, not in more, but in less. You, too, can begin practicing this simplicity. Start by asking yourself, what do I truly need in this moment to be at peace? Often, the answer is very little. A breath, a moment of stillness, an act of kindness. Begin by letting go of what is unnecessary. Release grudges that keep you trapped in sadness. Release the constant need to prove yourself to others. Release the weight of possessions that do not bring you joy. And as you release, notice how much lighter you feel. Sadness, too, will begin to release its hold, because it feeds on excess desire, excess comparison, excess attachment. Simplicity starves sadness and nourishes joy. When you practice joy and simplicity, gratitude and presence naturally grow. You realize that happiness is not waiting for you in the next chapter of your life. It is already written in this one. It is in the air filling your lungs, the ground beneath your feet, the warmth of the sun, the love in your heart. It is here, now, always available. The only question is whether you will notice it. So when sadness whispers that you are incomplete, answer with simplicity. Say to yourself, "This moment is enough. I am enough." Life as it is already a miracle. The more you practice this, the more sadness loses its grip. It cannot thrive in a heart that sees abundance in simplicity. And the more you embrace this truth, the more you discover a joy that does not fade, because it is not dependent on conditions. It is rooted in the essence of life itself. This is the final teaching. Stop chasing happiness outside of yourself and return to the simplicity within. When you let go of endless seeking, when you stop complicating life with demands and comparisons, you will discover that peace has always been with you. Sadness may still visit, but it will not stay, because a heart rooted in simplicity has no room for despair. It is filled instead with a quiet joy, a gentle gratitude, and a deep freedom that no storm can take away. Sadness fades when you realize everything is interconnected. One of the most powerful realizations in Buddhism is the teaching of pratityasamutpada, or dependent origination, the understanding that nothing in this universe exists by itself, and everything is connected to everything else. Sadness often feels like an isolating force. When it arrives, it convinces you that you are alone in your suffering, that no one understands, and that your pain is yours to carry in silence. But the truth, as Buddhism reveals, is the opposite. Nothing exists in isolation. Not a single tear you shed is separate from the larger flow of life. The sadness you feel is not a private prison, but part of the shared fabric of human existence. When you realize this, sadness begins to soften, because it no longer feels like a lonely weight pressing only on your heart. It becomes a reminder of your connection to all beings. Consider a flower blooming in a field. At first, you may think the flower exists by itself, but if you look more deeply, you see that the flower contains the entire universe. It needs the soil, the rain, the sunlight, the air, the seed, and countless invisible conditions to exist. Without clouds, there is no rain. Without the earth, there is no soil. Without the sun, there is no warmth. The flower may appear separate, but it is deeply connected to everything. In the same way, your sadness does not exist in isolation. It is connected to the experiences you have had, the people you have loved, the hopes you carried, and the losses you endured. It is connected to the universal human story of longing, attachment, change, and impermanence. When you feel sadness, remind yourself, this is not only me. Countless others feel this too. Right now, somewhere in the world, another person sits quietly in their room, feeling the same heaviness, the same ache, the same loneliness. Another person has lost someone they love. Another person is worried about the future. Another person is grieving what could have been. This recognition transforms sadness from isolation into connection. You begin to see that your suffering is not unique. It is shared, woven into the human experience. And with that realization, compassion naturally arises, both for yourself and for others. This interconnection also teaches us something important about the temporary nature of sadness. Just as a flower depends on many conditions to bloom, your sadness depends on conditions too. It may arise because of loss, because of unmet expectations, because of loneliness, or because of fear. When those conditions shift, sadness also shifts. Nothing stands alone, and nothing lasts forever. By seeing sadness as part of a larger web of causes and conditions, you begin to loosen your identification with it. You no longer say, "I am sadness," but rather, "Sadness has arisen because of these conditions, and just as it has arisen, it will also pass." Think about the ocean. When you look at a single wave, it may seem like it is separate, rising and falling on its own. But in truth, each wave is part of the vast ocean, connected to every other wave by the same body of water. Sadness is like a wave in the ocean of life. It may feel separate, but it is not. It is part of a greater whole, and knowing this brings peace. You realize that you are not alone in your suffering. You are one wave among many, rising and falling in the ocean of existence. This understanding of interconnection can change how you live every day. When you feel sadness, instead of withdrawing into isolation, you can use it as a bridge to connect with others. Share your heart with a trusted friend. Listen deeply to the stories of others. When you open yourself to connection, sadness transforms into empathy, and empathy brings healing. Many people suffer in silence because they believe their pain is theirs alone. But when you realize that everyone you meet carries invisible burdens, your heart becomes softer. You begin to treat others with kindness because you know they too may be carrying sadness just like you. Buddhist monks often describe this realization as a kind of liberation. Once you see that everything is interconnected, the sharp edges of sadness begin to dull. Instead of seeing sadness as a curse placed only upon you, you see it as part of a greater human truth. And from that place you can choose compassion instead of despair. You can say, "Because I know what sadness feels like, I will not add to the suffering of others. Because I have cried, I will comfort those who cry. Because I have felt alone, I will be a source of connection for others." In this way, your sadness becomes meaningful. It becomes a guide that leads you toward compassion, generosity, and love. There is also deep gratitude hidden in interconnection. If nothing exists by itself, then even in sadness, you are supported by countless forces. The air you breathe keeps you alive. The food you eat nourishes you. The ground beneath your feet holds you. Even when people hurt or disappoint you, there are others, seen and unseen, whose existence supports your life. When you open your eyes to this truth, sadness begins to lose its absolute hold, because you see that even in your lowest moments, you are never truly alone. Interconnection also teaches us responsibility. Because everything we do affects others, how we handle our sadness matters. If we close our hearts, we pass suffering forward. But if we use sadness to cultivate understanding, patience, and kindness, we pass healing forward. Every smile, every act of generosity, every word of comfort creates ripples that touch lives beyond what we can see. When you realize this, even your sadness can become a force of goodness. It can push you to live more mindfully, to love more deeply, and to create less suffering in the world. So the next time sadness weighs on your heart, pause and remember this. You are not an isolated being trapped in pain. You are part of the web of life. Your sadness connects you to every other human who has ever suffered. Your tears are the ocean's tears. Your heartache is the echo of countless hearts. And because of this, you are never alone, even in your darkest night. This realization may not erase the sadness, but it changes the way you hold it. Instead of carrying it as a lonely burden, you carry it as a shared truth, one that makes you softer, wiser, and more compassionate. In this way, sadness becomes less of a prison and more of a teacher. It teaches you that life is woven together, that nothing exists apart, that even in suffering you are connected to the greater whole, And in that realization, sadness begins to dissolve, because you see that beneath it all, you are part of something vast, timeless, and deeply alive. You are not alone. You have never been alone. You will never be alone. Everything you are and everything you feel is part of the great dance of interconnection, and in that truth, there is freedom. True healing begins when you befriend your sadness. Most people spend their entire lives running from sadness. They see it as an intruder, an enemy, a shadow to be avoided at all costs. We distract ourselves with noise, with constant busyness, with endless scrolling, with possessions and pleasures, all in an attempt to outrun the heaviness we feel inside. And yet, no matter how far we run, sadness follows. The harder we push it away, the more power it seems to gain. Buddhism, however, offers us a very different perspective. Instead of running from sadness, we are invited to turn toward it, to look at it directly, and to befriend it. This may sound frightening at first. Why would anyone want to befriend their sadness? But when you understand this teaching deeply, you realize that true healing begins not when you escape sadness, but when you learn to hold it gently and listen to what it has to say. Sadness is not random. It does not arise without reason. It comes as a messenger, carrying truths that we may not want to face but need to acknowledge. Perhaps it is pointing to something we have lost, reminding us of what we valued. Perhaps it is showing us where we are attached, revealing the places where our clinging causes suffering. Perhaps it is highlighting areas of our life that need change, relationships that no longer nurture us, patterns that harm us, expectations that weigh us down. When you run from sadness, you miss its message. But when you sit with it, like a compassionate friend sitting beside someone who is crying, you begin to hear what it is telling you. And in that listening, wisdom begins to grow. To befriend sadness does not mean you celebrate it or wish for it to stay forever. It means you stop treating it as an enemy. Instead of saying, "I should not feel this way," you say, "This is here, and I will meet it with patience." In Buddhist practice, this is the essence of mindfulness, turning your awareness toward whatever arises without judgment and without resistance. When sadness comes, you acknowledge it. Ah, sadness is here. You feel where it rests in your body, the tightness in your chest, the heaviness in your shoulders, the ache in your heart. You breathe into those places gently, without trying to force the feeling away. You allow sadness to exist, and paradoxically, the more space you give it, the less overwhelming it becomes. Imagine sadness as a guest who knocks on your door. If you pretend not to hear it, it keeps knocking louder. If you slam the door shut, it pounds with force. But if you open the door, welcome it inside and say, "You may stay for a while, but you will not control me," the guest eventually settles down. It may sit quietly for a time, and then, when its purpose is fulfilled, it leaves. This is how sadness works. It does not need to be fought. It needs to be acknowledged, respected, and eventually released. By befriending it, you take away its power to terrorize you. When you befriend sadness, you also begin to discover that it has gifts to offer. Sadness often deepens your capacity for empathy. When you know what it feels like to suffer, you become more sensitive to the suffering of others. Your heart softens, your judgments lessen, and your compassion grows. Sadness can also bring clarity. In moments of sorrow, you may realize what truly matters to you, stripping away superficial concerns and bringing you closer to your core values. It may show you the fragility of life, which in turn teaches you to cherish the moments you have more deeply. These are not small gifts. They are profound teachers, and they come only when you are willing to sit with sadness instead of running from it. One of the most powerful practices in Buddhism for befriending sadness is vipassana meditation, or insight meditation. In this practice, you observe your emotions without trying to change them. You notice sadness as it arises, stays, and eventually fades. You see it as impermanent, as part of the natural flow of life. Over time, this practice teaches you not to fear sadness because you realize it cannot last forever. You begin to see it as a wave on the ocean of awareness, rising, cresting, and falling back into stillness. The more you observe, the less frightening sadness becomes. It loses its power because you know it is just one passing state among many. Befriending sadness also requires self-compassion. Too often, when we feel sad, we add another layer of suffering by judging ourselves for it. We say, "I should be stronger. I should not feel this way. Something is wrong with me." But Buddhism teaches us to treat ourselves with the same kindness we would offer to a dear friend. If a friend came to you in sadness, would you scold them for being weak? Or would you comfort them, sit beside them, and remind them that their feelings are valid? When sadness arises in you, practice speaking to yourself with the same gentleness. Say, "It's okay. I am allowed to feel this. I will be patient with myself." This self-compassion transforms sadness into a softer, more bearable experience. Another aspect of befriending sadness is learning not to cling to it either. Some people, without realizing it, become attached to their sadness. It becomes part of their identity, a familiar companion they do not want to release, even when it harms them. They may feel that sadness gives them depth, or that it protects them from disappointment. But befriending sadness does not mean holding on to it forever. It means learning from it, honoring it, and then letting it go when the time comes. It is like reading a book. You absorb its lessons, but eventually you close it and move on to the next chapter. Befriending sadness also brings balance. Instead of being pulled into extremes, either resisting sadness completely or drowning in it, you learn to walk the middle path. You accept that sadness will come, but you do not give it absolute power. You allow it to exist, but you do not let it define you. This balanced relationship creates resilience. You are no longer fragile in the face of sadness because you know how to meet it with steadiness. You do not need to fear it because you know it cannot destroy you. This lesson has deep practical implications for everyday life. When sadness arises, instead of distracting yourself endlessly, pause. Sit in silence. Place your hand on your heart. Breathe slowly and simply say, "Sadness is here, and that is okay." Notice it, feel it, listen to it. Ask yourself gently, what is this sadness trying to show me? Sometimes the answer will be clear. Sometimes it will simply be an invitation to rest, to slow down, to take care of yourself. Either way, by befriending sadness, you create space for healing. And here is the paradox. When you stop running from sadness, when you stop treating it as an enemy, it often fades more quickly. The energy you once spent resisting it is released, and sadness no longer feels like a heavy weight. Instead, it becomes a passing visitor, sometimes difficult, sometimes painful, but never permanent. You learn that you are bigger than your sadness, that you can hold it without being consumed. And in that realization, a quiet peace begins to emerge. In the end, befriending sadness is about courage. It takes courage to sit with your pain instead of running from it. It takes courage to listen to what it has to say. It takes courage to hold it gently without clinging or resisting. But this courage is the doorway to freedom. Once you befriend your sadness, it no longer controls you. It becomes part of your journey, a teacher that walks beside you for a time, then leaves when the lesson is complete. And when it leaves you stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than before. So the next time sadness visits, do not close the door. Invite it in. Sit with it in silence. Treat it like a guest who has something important to say. Hold it with compassion, listen with patience, and when the time is right, let it go. This is the path to true healing. This is the way sadness loses its power. This is how you transform sorrow into strength and loneliness into connection. And when you learn this, you discover a profound truth, that sadness was never your enemy. It was always your teacher, guiding you back to yourself, guiding you toward peace. The path of acceptance, ending the war within. For most of us, sadness feels like a battle. We resist it, fight against it, and struggle to overcome it. We treat it as an enemy that must be defeated, a darkness that must be banished. Yet the more we fight, the more exhausted we become. The war within us grows louder, and sadness gains strength from our resistance. Buddhism offers a profound shift. Instead of fighting sadness, we are invited to accept it. Not in the sense of giving up, but in the sense of ending the inner war that makes suffering heavier than it needs to be. Acceptance is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the recognition that peace is not found in endless struggle, but in learning to live with reality as it is. The Buddha taught that suffering comes from our refusal to accept impermanence and change. We want things to stay the same, people to behave the way we expect, life to unfold according to our plans. When it does not, sadness arises. Then, instead of meeting that sadness with awareness, we often add another layer of suffering by saying, "This should not be happening. I should not feel this way." This second arrow of resistance pierces even deeper than the first. The original sadness was the first arrow. Our rejection of it becomes the second. The practice of acceptance is learning to stop firing the second arrow. Acceptance does not mean we enjoy sadness or want it to stay forever. It means we stop fighting the fact that it has arrived. We stop saying, "Why me?" and instead say, "This too is part of life." When you accept sadness, you allow yourself to feel it without judgment. You sit with it, breathe with it, and let it move through you. The paradox is that the moment you stop fighting, sadness begins to lose its weight. It may still be there, but it no longer crushes you, because you are no longer adding the burden of resistance on top of it. Think of water flowing around a rock. If the water resisted the rock, tried to push it away, the flow would stop and pressure would build. But because water simply flows around the obstacle, it continues its journey without struggle. Acceptance is like that. Life places rocks in your path, losses, disappointments, changes you did not choose. Sadness arises as a natural response. But if you resist it, you become stuck. If you accept it, you continue to flow. You do not deny the rock is there. You simply allow yourself to move with life instead of against it. This is not easy because the human mind has been trained to resist pain. From childhood, we learn to distract ourselves, to suppress feelings, to put on a brave face. We grow up believing that strength means never admitting sadness, never showing weakness. But true strength is not in denial, it is in presence. It is in the courage to face reality without turning away. Acceptance requires this courage. It is the courage to sit with your sadness, to say, "Yes, this hurts, but I will not run from it. I will not add more pain by resisting it. I will allow it to be here until it is ready to pass." In Buddhism, this practice is often described through the story of the lotus. The lotus is a flower that grows in muddy water. If the lotus resisted the mud, it could never bloom. But because it accepts the mud as its foundation, it rises from it, pure and beautiful. In the same way, your sadness is the mud of your life. It may feel dirty, heavy, or unwanted, but if you accept it instead of resisting, it becomes the ground from which your wisdom and compassion bloom. Without mud, there is no lotus. Without sadness, there is no growth. To practice acceptance, begin by noticing when resistance arises. Pay attention to the thoughts that accompany your sadness. Do you hear yourself saying, "This is unfair. I should not be feeling this. I want this to go away now. Each of these thoughts is a form of resistance, and each adds weight to your suffering. Instead, replace them with words of acceptance. This is here. It is difficult, but it is part of life. I can sit with this. These gentle reminders shift your relationship with sadness. You stop wrestling with it and start holding it. You become less of a prisoner and more of a witness. Another way to cultivate acceptance is through body awareness. Sadness often shows up physically as heaviness, tightness, or fatigue. Instead of resisting these sensations, place your attention on them. Breathe into the tightness in your chest, the heaviness in your shoulders, the ache in your stomach. As you breathe, imagine softening around those sensations. Do not try to push them away, simply let them be. This practice teaches your body to relax even in the presence of sadness. You realize that you can hold sadness without collapsing under it. Acceptance also extends to life itself. Much sadness arises from our refusal to accept reality. We want the past to be different, but it cannot change. We want people to behave differently, but they act according to their own causes and conditions. We want certainty in the future, but the future is always uncertain. When we fight these truths, sadness becomes endless. But when we accept them, sadness loses its sting. We begin to live more peacefully because we stop demanding that life be other than what it is. Acceptance is not passive. It does not mean giving up on growth, justice, or change. It means starting from a place of peace instead of struggle. For example, if you are sad about a loss, acceptance means acknowledging the loss fully instead of pretending it did not happen. From that place of acceptance, healing can begin. If you are sad about a mistake, acceptance means owning it without self-hatred. From that place of acceptance, you can learn and grow. If you are sad about a future you cannot control, acceptance means acknowledging your limits. From that place of acceptance, you can focus on what you can influence. Acceptance is the doorway to wise action because it clears away the fog of resistance and allows you to see clearly. When you live with acceptance, you no longer carry the extra burden of should and should not. You no longer demand that life fit into your narrow frame. You simply live with what is, moment by moment, with awareness and compassion. Sadness still comes, but it no longer defines you. It becomes part of the tapestry of life, woven alongside joy, gratitude, and peace. This lesson may be the most challenging of all because it asks you to end the war within. It asks you to stop resisting what feels unbearable. But if you have the courage to try, you will discover a freedom greater than anything else. You will realize that sadness itself was never the enemy. The real enemy was your struggle against it. The moment you lay down your arms, the battle ends, and in that silence, peace begins to grow. So when sadness arises, practice acceptance. Breathe, notice the urge to resist, and gently let it go. Say to yourself, "This is here, and it is okay. I will allow it." In doing so, you step into the deepest wisdom of Buddhism, that peace is not found in changing the world to match your desires, but in changing your relationship to what is. Acceptance is that change. It is the key to ending the war within. And when the war ends, sadness no longer rules your life. It becomes a teacher, a guide, and eventually just another passing cloud in the vast open sky of your being. Peace comes when you stop running from yourself. One of the deepest causes of sadness is not the pain of life itself, but our constant attempt to run away from ourselves. When discomfort arises, when loneliness echoes in the heart, when emptiness seems unbearable, we immediately look outward for escape. We drown ourselves in distractions, entertainment, endless scrolling, constant noise, chasing after pleasure or approval, anything to avoid sitting in silence with what is truly inside us. Yet the more we run, the farther we get from peace, because peace is not found in escape. Peace is found in turning inward, in stopping the endless chase, and in finally learning to rest within ourselves. Buddhism teaches that true freedom comes not when you abandon yourself, but when you return to yourself with acceptance, awareness, and compassion. Why do we run from ourselves? Often because we fear what we might find in the silence. In the quiet, we hear the voice of our sadness, the weight of our regrets, the pain of our unhealed wounds. It feels easier to keep moving, to stay busy, to pretend that if we don't look at our inner world, it will eventually disappear. But what we resist only grows stronger. The emotions we bury do not vanish, they simply wait, hidden, shaping our actions from the shadows. The more we ignore them, the more control they gain. This is why people feel an emptiness even in moments of apparent success. They may have wealth, status, or recognition, but because they are disconnected from themselves, sadness lingers beneath the surface. Buddhism teaches us to do something radically different. Instead of running away from ourselves, we are invited to sit down, breathe, and return home to our own hearts. This is the essence of mindfulness, being fully present with what is, without distraction and without judgment. It means sitting with your sadness instead of fleeing from it, listening to your body instead of numbing it, acknowledging your thoughts instead of drowning them in noise. When you stop running, you begin to see clearly, and when you see clearly, you begin to heal. Imagine a child crying in the dark. If you keep running from the child, their cries grow louder, but if you stop, turn around, and hold the child in your arms, the crying softens. That child is your sadness. That child is your inner self asking to be seen. When you stop running and instead turn toward yourself with compassion, the cries begin to quiet. You realize that sadness was never asking you to destroy it. It was asking you to acknowledge it. In acknowledging it, you begin to integrate it into your life rather than treating it as a monster to be feared. Meditation is the practice of no longer running. When you sit in silence, your first instinct may be to resist. Thoughts will flood your mind. Emotions will rise. Your sadness will show itself more strongly than before. This is why many people give up on meditation. They think it makes them feel worse. But what is truly happening is that the noise you once buried is finally being revealed. This is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of progress. You are finally facing yourself instead of running away. With practice, the storm of thoughts begins to settle, like muddy water becoming clear when left undisturbed. In that clarity, you begin to see yourself honestly. And in that honesty, peace arises. When you stop running, you discover that you are stronger than you thought. The sadness you feared so much is not as unbearable as your imagination told you. It is heavy, yes, but it is survivable. You can sit with it, breathe through it, and watch it rise and fall. This realization is deeply empowering. It teaches you that you do not need to fear your own emotions. They are not your enemies. They are visitors, and you are the host. You can welcome them, let them stay for a while, and then watch them leave. The fear disappears because you realize you can handle what arises inside you. Stopping the run also allows you to rediscover the beauty of solitude. Many people confuse solitude with loneliness, but they are not the same. Loneliness is the pain of running from yourself, of feeling empty even in your own company. Solitude, on the other hand, is the joy of resting fully in your own presence. It is sitting quietly and feeling whole, without needing constant distraction or validation. Buddhism often encourages periods of solitude not as punishment, but as medicine. In solitude, you return to your breath, to the simplicity of being, to the peace that is always within you, but hidden beneath the noise of constant running. Sadness begins to dissolve when you cultivate this relationship with yourself. When you stop searching outside for something to fix you and instead turn inward, You realize that you already have what you need. The calm you have been chasing in external things is within your own awareness. The comfort you sought in others is within your own compassion. The strength you thought was missing is within your own resilience. The truth is that sadness grows when we abandon ourselves, but it softens when we finally come home. Of course, coming home to yourself does not mean rejecting the world. It means engaging with it more authentically. When you are at peace within, you no longer seek constant distractions. You can enjoy relationships, work, and pleasures without clinging to them as escapes. You can love without fear because you are no longer using love to fill a void. You can experience joy without desperation because you are no longer chasing joy as a cure. This balance transforms the way you live. Sadness may still visit, but it does not dominate because you are grounded in yourself. One of the most profound teachings of the Buddha was that the mind, when untrained, is like a monkey, restless, noisy, always jumping from one branch to another. But the mind, when trained, becomes like a calm elephant, steady, strong, and unshaken. Training the mind to stop running is what gives you this steadiness. You no longer need to chase happiness outside yourself. You no longer need to fear sadness within yourself. You become rooted, balanced, and free. This lesson also reveals why forgiveness is such a vital part of healing sadness. Many of us run from ourselves because we cannot face our own mistakes. We carry guilt, shame, or regret, and we bury these feelings under layers of distraction. But when you stop running, you must face these parts of yourself too. And when you face them with compassion, you realize that you can forgive yourself. You can accept that you are human, that you have stumbled, and that you are still worthy of love. This self-forgiveness is one of the most powerful medicines for sadness, because much of our suffering is not about what others have done to us, but about what we have not yet forgiven in ourselves. To stop running is also to embrace impermanence. When you sit with yourself, you realize that even sadness, no matter how overwhelming, is not permanent. You watch it arise, peak, and fade. You see that it is part of the ever-changing flow of life. This realization gives you courage. You no longer need to flee from sadness because you know it cannot last forever. Like every wave in the ocean, it will eventually dissolve back into stillness. So how do you practice this lesson in daily life? Begin with small acts of stillness. Spend a few minutes each day sitting quietly without distractions, simply breathing and noticing what arises. When sadness appears, do not run. Welcome it. Feel it fully. Place your hand on your heart and say, "I am here for you." Over time, you will notice that the sadness becomes less frightening. It may still come, but it no longer controls you. You become the steady host, and sadness becomes just another guest. The ultimate truth is this: peace is not found by escaping yourself. Peace is found by embracing yourself fully, with all your light and all your shadows. Sadness is part of you, but it is not all of you. By stopping the endless run, by coming home to yourself, you reclaim your wholeness. You realize that you are not broken, you are not incomplete, and you do not need to be fixed. You are already enough as you are in this moment. When you learn to stop running from yourself, sadness loses its grip. It no longer feels like a storm that will drown you, but like a passing rain that nourishes the soil of your being. And in that soil, something new begins to grow: peace, compassion, and a joy that does not depend on escape. That is the power of acceptance, the power of mindfulness, the power of finally learning to be at home in yourself. And in that home, sadness can no longer control you. It becomes only a visitor, while you remain the master of your inner world. The impermanence of sadness, learning to trust the flow of life. Among the most profound truths the Buddha ever taught is the law of impermanence, anicca. Everything in life is in constant motion, always changing, never still. Nothing lasts forever. The seasons change, the river flows, the clouds drift, and every moment of your life arises, stays for a time, and eventually fades. This truth is simple, yet most of our sadness comes from forgetting it. We cling to the belief that what we love will last forever, or that what we fear will never end. When reality proves otherwise, the mind resists, and sadness grows heavy. But if we truly understand impermanence, sadness loses its ability to imprison us. It becomes only part of the flow of life, a wave on the great ocean that rises and falls like all others. When you are sad, it feels endless. The heart aches, and the mind whispers that this feeling will never go away. We tell ourselves stories like, "I will always feel this way," or "life will never get better." But these are illusions created by the mind. Think of every sadness you have experienced in the past. Did any of them stay forever? At the time, they may have felt unbearable, but eventually they softened, changed, or disappeared. Even the deepest grief shifts with time, evolving into something new, sometimes into wisdom, sometimes into compassion, sometimes into a gentler form of remembrance. No emotion, no matter how strong, is permanent. This truth can be deeply liberating when you fully embrace it. Sadness may still come, but you stop believing its lies. You stop thinking, "This is forever," and instead remind yourself, "This too shall pass." That simple shift changes everything. Suddenly, sadness is no longer an endless prison. It is only a passing visitor. You know it may stay for a while, but eventually it will leave. This knowledge gives you patience. It gives you the courage to sit with sadness without fear, because you know it cannot define you forever. Impermanence also teaches us to let go of resistance. Much of our suffering comes not from sadness itself, but from the way we cling to what has already changed. We hold on to the past as if we could freeze it in place. We replay old moments, wishing they could return, refusing to accept that they are gone. But the past is like a river. You cannot step into the same water twice. When you cling to what has already flowed downstream, you suffer. Acceptance means allowing the river to flow. It means bowing to impermanence and saying, "I will not fight the current. I will trust the flow of life." Think of the autumn leaves. Each year they fall from the trees, bright and beautiful, returning to the soil. The tree does not cling to the leaves, crying that they should stay. It lets them go, trusting that spring will bring new growth. In the same way, life asks us to let go of what has passed, to trust that even when sadness strips away what we love, new seasons will come. This is not about denying grief. It is about trusting the cycle of change. When you learn to trust the flow, sadness becomes less of a punishment and more of a teacher reminding you of life's rhythm. Impermanence also changes how we view joy. If sadness is temporary, so too is happiness. At first, this may sound depressing, but it is actually a gift. Because nothing lasts forever, every moment becomes precious. You learn to cherish joy while it is here, knowing it will pass, and you learn to sit with sadness while it is here, knowing it too will pass. Impermanence teaches us gratitude for the present moment, because the present is all we truly have. Sadness loses its sting because you no longer demand permanence in a world that is always moving. Another powerful way impermanence heals sadness is by showing us that even our identities are not fixed. We often say, "I am a sad person," as if sadness is part of who we are. But Buddhism teaches that the self itself is impermanent, made up of ever-changing thoughts, emotions, and experiences. The person you were yesterday is not the same as the person you are today, and tomorrow you will be different again. Sadness may feel overwhelming now, but it does not define you. It is only one chapter in the story of your ever-changing self. When you realize this, sadness becomes lighter because you know it cannot be the whole story. Meditation on impermanence is one of the most transformative practices in Buddhism. Sit quietly and observe your breath. Notice how each inhale arises, stays for a moment, and fades into the exhale. No breath lasts forever. Then notice your thoughts. They arise, linger, and dissolve. No thought lasts forever. Then notice your emotions. They too rise and fall, just like the breath, just like the thoughts. Through this practice, you see directly, not just as an idea but as an experience, that impermanence is the law of life. When you see this clearly, sadness no longer terrifies you. You realize it is only a wave, and waves cannot last. Impermanence also invites us to release the illusion of control. We suffer because we try to hold on to what must eventually change. We want relationships to last forever, health to never fade, life to always go our way. But no matter how tightly we cling, change will come. The more we resist it, the more pain we feel. But if we learn to surrender, to trust the flow, we discover peace. This is not resignation. It is wisdom. It is the recognition that change is not our enemy, but the very nature of life. By embracing it, we stop fighting what cannot be stopped and begin to flow with what is. This trust in impermanence also teaches resilience. When sadness comes, you no longer collapse under its weight. You say to yourself, "This is difficult, but it will pass." When joy comes, you cherish it deeply, knowing it will not stay forever. In both cases, you remain steady, anchored not in fleeting emotions, but in the wisdom that everything changes. This steadiness is the heart of equanimity, the calm balance that Buddhism teaches as the foundation of true peace. Impermanence even transforms grief. When you lose someone you love, the sadness feels unbearable. But when you look deeply, you see that even though the form has changed, the love remains. The moments you shared, the lessons you learned, the ways they touched your heart, these remain part of you. The person may no longer be here in the same way, but their presence is not gone. It has transformed, like water becoming cloud, cloud becoming rain, and rain becoming river. When you understand impermanence, you see that nothing is ever truly lost. It only changes form. This realization softens grief and brings comfort to the heart. So how do you practice this lesson? Begin by reminding yourself daily, everything changes. When you feel joy, whisper to yourself, "This will pass. Let me treasure it." When you feel sadness, whisper, "This will pass. Let me be patient." When you feel anger, whisper, "This will pass. Let me not cling." By doing this, you train your mind to see impermanence not as a threat, but as a truth that brings freedom. You learn to meet each moment fully, without clinging or resisting. And in that balance, sadness begins to dissolve. The ultimate gift of impermanence is hope. No matter how dark your night may feel, the dawn will come. No matter how heavy your sadness may seem, it cannot last forever. Life is always moving, always changing, always offering new possibilities. To trust impermanence is to trust life itself. It is to know that even in the deepest sorrow, the seeds of joy are already present, waiting for the right conditions to bloom again. So when sadness arises, remember, it is not forever. It is only a wave, and you are the ocean. It is only a season, and you are the sky that holds it. Do not cling, do not resist. Simply trust the flow of life. In that trust, sadness loses its power and peace becomes possible. Liberation comes from letting go of the illusion of me. Perhaps the deepest source of sadness is not only attachment to people, possessions, or expectations, but attachment to the idea of ourselves. The belief that there is a solid, unchanging me that must always be protected, maintained, and satisfied. We spend our lives constructing this sense of self, building it from our memories, our achievements, our roles, and our desires. We cling to it as if it were permanent. And when life challenges this image, when we fail, when others reject us, when we lose what we thought defined us, sadness cuts deeply. It feels as if a piece of us has been shattered. Buddhism teaches that this suffering arises because we misunderstand the nature of the self. What we call me is not a fixed entity, but a collection of ever-changing processes. To realize this truth is to loosen the grip of sadness and to step into liberation. The Buddha described the self as made up of 5 aggregates, or skandhas: form, the body, sensations, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. These 5 aggregates are constantly shifting. Your body changes with every breath, every cell dying and regenerating. Your sensations change moment by moment, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Your perceptions shift as your understanding grows. Your thoughts, emotions, and habits rise and fall. Even your consciousness, the awareness of experience, flickers with the rhythm of life. If all these components are constantly changing, how can any of them be the permanent me we cling to? Sadness often comes when one of these aggregates changes in a way we do not want. We grieve the aging of the body, the loss of pleasant sensations, the fading of relationships, the collapse of beliefs, or the disruption of our identity. We say, "This is me," and when it changes, we suffer. But when you see that there is no fixed self to protect, only a flow of changing conditions, sadness softens. You realize you are not losing yourself because there was never a permanent self to lose. You are, in truth, more like a river than a stone, ever changing, never the same from one moment to the next. This insight is not meant to diminish your humanity. It is meant to free you. Imagine clinging to a cloud and crying when it shifts shape. You suffer because you believed the cloud should stay the same. But if you accept that clouds are by nature changing, you can enjoy their beauty while they last, without despair when they transform. The self is like that cloud. When you cling to it as permanent, sadness arises at every change. But when you embrace it as impermanent, you live with more ease. This realization also transforms how you see sadness itself. If the self is not fixed, then sadness is not yours in the way you think. It is not an eternal mark on your identity. It is simply one passing formation among many, arising due to causes and conditions. Just as joy arises and fades, so too does sadness. It does not belong to a fixed me. It is just a guest moving through the house of awareness. The more you identify with the self, the more sadness feels heavy. The more you release the self, the lighter sadness becomes. To touch this truth deeply, practice observing the self in meditation. Sit quietly and watch your thoughts arise. Notice how one thought comes, lingers for a moment, and dissolves, only to be replaced by another. Ask yourself, if I am my thoughts, which one is me? The one that just left, the one that just arrived, or the one that is yet to come? You will see that no single thought can define you, because they are always changing. Then watch your emotions. Sadness arises, stays, and fades. Joy arises, stays, and fades. Fear arises, stays, and fades. If you were any of these emotions, you would vanish when they vanish. But you do not vanish. You remain as the awareness that sees them. This awareness is not the self in the way you imagine. It is simply presence, vast and open, unbound by the stories of me. Letting go of the illusion of self also changes the way you relate to others. Much sadness comes from pride, comparison, and the desire to protect my image. We feel hurt when others do not see us the way we want to be seen. We feel sadness when our status, reputation, or achievements are threatened. But when you realize the self is not fixed, you stop clinging to these fragile identities. You become freer, lighter. You can engage with others without needing constant validation. You can love without fear of rejection, because your worth is not tied to an image of self. You can let go of pride because you see that you are not separate from the whole. This insight also transforms grief. When someone you love passes away, sadness arises because we see them as a fixed self that has been lost. But when you look deeply, you see that they too were a collection of conditions, always changing, always flowing. The person you loved has not vanished. They have transformed. Their body has returned to the earth. Their actions live on in the lives they touched. Their love lives on in your heart. When you see this, grief softens. You realize that death is not the destruction of a permanent self, but the transformation of conditions. Nothing is truly lost. It only changes form. Letting go of the illusion of self does not mean you lose your individuality. It means you stop clinging to it as absolute. You still live, love, and act, but you do so with freedom. You understand that you are not a fixed entity, but a dynamic part of the interconnected web of life. This makes you less afraid of change, less trapped in sadness, less burdened by the need to protect an image. You become more fluid, more compassionate, more present. Think of a wave in the ocean. At first, the wave believes it is separate. I am this wave. I must fight to survive. I must fear the moment I crash. This belief creates fear and sadness. But when the wave realizes, I am not separate from the ocean, I am the ocean taking the temporary form of a wave, fear dissolves. The wave rises, falls, and returns to the ocean, but the ocean remains. In the same way, when you realize you are not a separate, fixed self, but part of the vast flow of existence, sadness loses its grip. You no longer fear the changes of life, because you know you are not destroyed by them. You are life itself, always transforming, always flowing. This teaching is not meant to remain only in theory. It must be practiced. In daily life, notice when sadness arises from the sense of me. When you think, why is this happening to me? Or, what does this say about me? Pause. Ask yourself, who is this me I am protecting? Look closely, and you will see it is only a story, a collection of thoughts, memories, and expectations. It is not permanent. It is not solid. When you loosen your grip on this story, the sadness it created begins to dissolve. This lesson also teaches humility. When you see that the self is not fixed, you stop clinging to superiority or inferiority. You stop comparing yourself endlessly to others. You no longer feel the sadness of inadequacy because you know that you are not a fixed identity to be measured. You are a process, just like everyone else. This frees you from the constant cycle of pride and shame, lifting a huge weight of sadness from your heart. Ultimately, letting go of the illusion of self reveals the deepest freedom. Sadness may still arise, but it no longer feels like a permanent scar on who you are. It is only one wave among many, rising and falling in the ocean of life. You realize that the awareness behind it all is spacious, unbroken, and free. This is the liberation Buddhism points toward, not freedom from feeling, but freedom from identification. When you no longer cling to me, sadness has nowhere to take root. It becomes lighter, softer, easier to release. So the next time sadness overwhelms you, remember this teaching. Ask yourself, who is the one that is sad? Is it a fixed self, or is it simply a collection of passing thoughts and feelings? Look deeply, and you will see that sadness, like everything else, is impermanent and not bound to a permanent me. In that realization, the weight begins to lift. You no longer see sadness as a permanent mark, but as a temporary wave. You no longer see yourself as fragile and separate, but as part of the vast, flowing ocean of life. And in that ocean, you discover a peace that sadness cannot take away. This is the great liberation of Buddhism, to see through the illusion of self and rest in the freedom of awareness. To realize that sadness is not yours in the way you once believed, but simply part of the changing flow of life. To let go of the burden of protecting a fragile me and instead live with openness, compassion and peace. When you learn this, sadness still comes, but it no longer destroys you. It passes through like a cloud in the sky, leaving behind a deeper clarity, a deeper freedom, and a deeper joy that no storm can erase. The middle path, finding balance beyond sadness. Sadness often feels like being pulled into extremes. At one extreme, we try to resist it completely, to suppress it, to deny its existence. At the other extreme, we drown in it, letting it consume our thoughts, our actions, and our entire identity. Both paths deepen suffering. Resistance creates tension, making sadness heavier than it needs to be. Indulgence creates despair, convincing us there is no way out. The Buddha, however, offered a different way, the middle path. This is the path of balance, the path of wisdom, the path of neither clinging to sadness nor running from it, but walking steadily between the extremes. When you learn this balance, sadness loses its ability to control you. It becomes just one part of life's flow, no longer an enemy, no longer a master, but simply a passing state you can meet with equanimity. The Buddha himself discovered the middle path after years of exploring extremes. He lived first in great luxury as a prince, surrounded by pleasures, and then in severe asceticism, denying his body food, comfort, and rest. Neither extreme brought liberation. It was only when he sat beneath the Bodhi tree and discovered the middle path, moderation, mindfulness, and balance, that enlightenment came. In the same way, your sadness cannot be healed by extremes. You cannot find peace by endlessly running from it, nor by endlessly indulging in it. You must walk the middle path, learning how to live with sadness without being defined by it. What does the middle path look like in practice? It begins with awareness. When sadness arises, you notice it without judgment. You do not push it away or cling to it. You simply say, "Sadness is here." You allow it to exist without fighting it, but you also do not drown in its story. You do not feed it with endless thoughts about the past or future. You observe it as a visitor, knowing it will not stay forever. This balance, being present with sadness without being consumed, is the essence of the middle path. Imagine holding a bird in your hand. If you grip too tightly, you harm it. If you open your hand completely, it flies away. The middle path is holding gently, allowing the bird to rest without clinging, without crushing. Sadness is that bird. If you resist it, you create more pain. If you indulge it, you become trapped. But if you hold it lightly with awareness, you can learn from it and release it naturally when the time comes. The middle path also means balancing acceptance with action. Acceptance alone is powerful, but if misunderstood, it can slip into passivity. Some people say, "I must accept my sadness," and then do nothing to care for themselves. This is not true acceptance, it is resignation. The middle path says, accept sadness as it is, but also take wise action to support your healing. This may mean practicing meditation, spending time in nature, reaching out to loved ones, or engaging in practices that nurture peace. It is not about forcing sadness away, but about creating conditions for well-being to grow. Acceptance is the soil and action is the water. Together they allow the flower of healing to bloom. Another aspect of the middle path is balancing solitude with connection. When sadness strikes, some isolate themselves completely, cutting off from the world. Others cling desperately to others, unable to sit alone. Both extremes deepen suffering. The middle path teaches you to honor both solitude and connection. Spend time with yourself, practicing mindfulness and self-compassion. Learn to sit in your own presence without fear, but also reach out when needed, remembering that interconnection brings strength. Balance solitude with community, inner work with outer support, and sadness begins to soften. The middle path also addresses how we use pleasure. When sad, many people seek escape in excess, overeating, overdrinking, overworking, or numbing themselves with distractions. Others reject all pleasure, believing they must punish themselves for feeling sad. Both are harmful. The middle path teaches moderation. Enjoy simple pleasures mindfully, a warm cup of tea, the sound of rain, the company of a friend, but do not cling to them as permanent cures. They can comfort and support you, but they cannot replace the deeper work of understanding sadness. By approaching pleasure with balance, you neither drown in indulgence nor suffer in denial. Walking the middle path also means balancing effort and rest. When we are sad, some push themselves too hard, trying to escape sadness by staying busy. Others give up completely, letting sadness paralyze them. Both approaches create imbalance. The middle path invites you to use effort wisely. Do what needs to be done with mindfulness, but also allow yourself to rest. Effort without rest creates exhaustion. Rest without effort creates stagnation. Balance both, and sadness becomes easier to bear. On a deeper level, the middle path is about cultivating equanimity, the calm balance of mind that does not rise and fall wildly with emotions. Equanimity is not indifference, it is stability. It is the ability to feel sadness fully but not be destroyed by it. It is the ability to enjoy joy fully but not cling to it desperately. The middle path teaches that life will always bring both happiness and sadness, gain and loss, praise and blame, success and failure. If you chase one and resist the other, you suffer endlessly. But if you meet both with equanimity, you find peace that cannot be shaken. Consider a tree in the wind. If the tree resists too strongly, it breaks. If it has no roots, it falls. But if it bends with the wind while staying rooted in the earth, it survives. The middle path is like that tree, flexible yet grounded, soft yet strong. When sadness is the wind, you bend without breaking. You remain rooted in mindfulness and wisdom. This balance allows you to live through storms without losing yourself. The middle path also transforms relationships. Sadness often arises in how we relate to others. We may cling too tightly, demanding love that cannot be forced. Or we may shut down, refusing to open our hearts. Both extremes cause pain. The middle path teaches balanced love. Love without attachment. Love without fear. It means caring deeply for others while accepting their freedom to be who they are. It means offering compassion without losing yourself. It means being open without being desperate, wise without being cold. When you walk this balanced path, relationships become a source of joy rather than a source of endless sadness. Practicing the middle path requires daily mindfulness. It is not a single decision, but a way of living. Each day, notice when you lean toward extremes. Are you resisting sadness too much? Are you drowning in it? Are you avoiding people completely or clinging to them too tightly? Are you overindulging in distractions or denying yourself all comfort? Gently bring yourself back to balance. This is not about perfection. It is about awareness. Each moment of balance weakens the grip of sadness and strengthens the peace within you. Ultimately, the middle path is not only about sadness, it is about life itself. All suffering arises when we live in extremes. All peace arises when we find balance. Sadness will still visit, but it will no longer feel like an endless prison. It will feel like a passing wave, part of the great rhythm of life. You will no longer fear it because you know how to walk the balanced path between resistance and indulgence. You will no longer be crushed by it because you know how to meet it with equanimity. This is the wisdom the Buddha offered, not a promise that sadness would vanish, but a path to live with sadness wisely. By walking the middle path, you discover freedom, not the freedom of never feeling pain, but the freedom of never being enslaved by it. You learn to live in balance, to meet life as it is, and to find peace in every step. So when sadness arises, remember the middle path. Do not fight it, do not drown in it. Hold it lightly, accept it, but act wisely. Rest, but also take effort. Seek solitude, but also seek connection. Enjoy simple pleasures, but do not cling to them. Walk steadily between the extremes, and you will find that sadness, no matter how heavy, can no longer control you. It becomes only part of the journey, while you remain free. Freedom from sadness through non-attachment. At the heart of Buddhist wisdom lies one principle that unlocks profound peace: non-attachment. Much of our sadness arises because we cling to people, cling to possessions, cling to expectations, cling to the idea that life should unfold according to our design. When what we cling to changes or slips away, sadness enters with heavy footsteps. We say to ourselves, "I cannot live without this. I cannot bear this loss. I cannot accept this change." But the truth is that clinging itself is the cause of suffering. The Buddha taught that nothing in this world can be held forever because everything is impermanent. To cling to what cannot be held is like trying to grasp water in your fists. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. Non-attachment does not mean indifference, nor does it mean we stop loving. It means we learn to love without chains, to care without clinging, to experience life fully while allowing it to flow freely. When you look closely at sadness, you will often find attachment at its root. We feel sad when someone leaves because we attached our happiness to their presence. We feel sad when we lose possessions because we attached our security to them. We feel sad when plans fail because we attached our identity to outcomes. We even feel sad when time passes because we attached ourselves to the illusion of permanence. The stronger the attachment, the deeper the sadness when life inevitably changes. This is not because life is cruel, it is because we resist its natural flow. Non-attachment invites us to loosen the grip. It asks us to open our hands and allow life to move as it will, knowing that clinging only deepens suffering. Imagine holding a butterfly. If you squeeze too tightly, you harm it. If you hold it gently, it rests in your hand, free to leave when it must. This is how non-attachment works. You can love deeply, you can enjoy fully, but you do so with open hands, not clenched fists. Sadness softens because your peace is no longer dependent on keeping what cannot be kept. Many people misunderstand non-attachment as coldness or apathy. They fear that letting go of attachment means losing love or passion. But Buddhism teaches the opposite. Attachment is not love. It is fear disguised as love. It is the fear of losing, the fear of change, the fear of being without. True love is found in non-attachment. It is love that says, "I care for you, I cherish you, but I do not need to possess you. You are free, and my joy does not depend on controlling you." This love is purer, freer, and deeper than attachment. It brings peace instead of sadness, because it flows with change instead of fighting against it. Non-attachment also applies to our inner world. We often attach to identities, stories, and emotions. We say, "I am a sad person," or "this sadness is who I am." But these are attachments to passing states. When we cling to them, we reinforce sadness as part of our identity. Non-attachment means learning to say, "This sadness is here, but it is not me. It is a passing guest, and I do not need to hold on to it. The more you release these inner attachments, the freer you become. Sadness comes, sadness goes, but you remain steady. One way to practice non-attachment is through mindfulness. When a pleasant experience arises, enjoy it fully, but remind yourself, this too will pass. When sadness arises, observe it with the same awareness. This too will pass. By treating both joy and sadness as temporary, you avoid clinging to one or resisting the other. You rest in balance, knowing that both are part of life's rhythm. This balanced awareness is the essence of equanimity. Consider the story of a monk who carried a bowl of water each morning. Sometimes the water was clear, reflecting the sky. Sometimes it was muddy from the rain. At first, the monk became sad when the water was dirty and joyful when it was clear. But over time, he learned to see both states as natural. He stopped clinging to one and resisting the other. He accepted the water as it came, and in that acceptance, his mind became peaceful. Your life is like that bowl of water. Some days it is clear, some days it is muddy. Sadness arises when you cling to clarity and reject the mud. Non-attachment means accepting both as part of life, and in that acceptance, peace is found. Non-attachment also transforms grief. When we lose someone, sadness can feel unbearable because we cling to the belief that they should remain with us forever. But when we look deeply, we see that even our loved ones are part of the great flow of impermanence. They were never ours to keep. Their presence was a gift, and their departure is part of the natural cycle. Non-attachment does not erase grief, but it softens it. It allows us to honor their memory with love while accepting their transformation. We realize that nothing is truly lost. It only changes form. The body may go, but love remains. The presence may vanish, but the impact lives on. In this way, non-attachment frees us from drowning in endless sorrow. On a practical level, non-attachment can be practiced every day. Start with small things. Notice when you cling to objects, to routines, to expectations. Practice loosening your grip. If plans change, instead of clinging to disappointment, practice flowing with the new situation. If someone behaves differently than you hoped, instead of clinging to resentment, practice letting them be. Each small act of non-attachment weakens the roots of sadness because sadness thrives on clinging. Non-attachment also applies to success and failure. We often attach our happiness to outcomes. If I succeed, I will be happy. If I fail, I will be sad. This creates endless suffering because outcomes are never fully in our control. The middle path teaches us to give our best effort but release attachment to results. Success may come, failure may come, but your peace does not depend on either. When you live this way, sadness loses one of its strongest weapons, the power of disappointment. You realize that success and failure are both temporary, and neither defines your worth. This lesson also touches our relationship with time. Much sadness comes from clinging to the past or fearing the future. We attach ourselves to memories, wishing they could return, or to expectations, dreading what might come. Non-attachment means releasing these mental chains. The past is gone, the future is not yet here. All that exists is this moment. When you release attachment to time, sadness weakens, because sadness feeds on what is no longer real. The only real place is now, and in the now, peace is always available. Non-attachment does not mean living without care. It means living with freedom. You still care deeply for people, but you do not chain your happiness to them. You still enjoy life's pleasures, but you do not cling when they fade. You still pursue dreams, but you are not destroyed if they change. You live fully, but you live freely. This freedom is what Buddhism calls liberation, nirvana. It is not the absence of life, but the absence of clinging. It is the ability to meet joy without grasping and meet sadness without despair. The practice of non-attachment requires patience. The mind is deeply conditioned to cling. It will whisper, "Without this, I cannot live. Without this, I am nothing." Each time it whispers, gently remind yourself, everything changes. Nothing is mine to hold. I can love, I can cherish, but I cannot cling. Over time, this reminder becomes natural. You begin to live with open hands, open heart, open mind. Sadness still visits, but it no longer chains you. It comes and goes like the tide while you remain free. Ultimately, non-attachment is the path to true love, true peace, and true freedom. When you stop clinging, you discover that life itself is enough. You are no longer enslaved by desires, no longer crushed by losses, no longer defined by sadness. You become like the sky, vast, open, spacious, while emotions pass like clouds. Some clouds are dark, some are light, but none can harm the sky. Non-attachment reveals that you are that sky. Sadness may pass through, but it can never touch your true nature. So when sadness arises, look deeply for the attachment beneath it. Ask yourself, what am I clinging to that causes this pain? Then breathe, soften, and release. Remind yourself, I can love without clinging. I can live without chains. I can let life flow. In that release, sadness loses its weight. It becomes lighter, softer, more fleeting. And in its place, peace arises. Not a fragile peace dependent on conditions, but a deep, unshakable peace born of freedom. This is the gift of non-attachment. It does not take you out of life. It allows you to live it more fully. It does not numb your heart. It opens it wider. It does not deny sadness, but it makes sadness powerless. By letting go, you discover that nothing was truly yours to lose, and nothing can take away the freedom that is already within you. This is the final liberation, not the absence of sadness, but the freedom from its chains. The power of compassion to dissolve sadness. Sadness has a way of closing the heart. When we are hurting, we tend to retreat into ourselves, wrapping our pain around us like a heavy cloak. We withdraw from others, convinced that our suffering is unique, that no one can truly understand. In this isolation, sadness grows stronger, feeding on loneliness and self-pity. Yet Buddhism teaches that the true medicine for sadness is not withdrawal, but compassion, opening the heart instead of closing it, turning outward instead of only inward. Compassion is the ability to feel the suffering of others as your own and to respond with kindness and understanding. It is not pity and it is not weakness. Compassion is strength. The strength to remain open in a world that often wounds. The strength to transform pain into love. The strength to dissolve sadness not by avoiding it, but by using it as a bridge to connect with all beings. The Buddha himself embodied this truth. After awakening, he could have remained in stillness, untouched by the world's suffering. Yet he chose to walk among people, teaching, healing, and comforting, because his compassion was boundless. He understood that sadness and suffering are universal, woven into the fabric of human life. By cultivating compassion, he dissolved the illusion of separation, the illusion that my suffering is separate from yours. He saw clearly that all beings long for happiness and freedom from pain. And in that recognition, compassion arose naturally. When you are sad, one of the most powerful things you can do is shift your attention outward, not to escape your pain, but to recognize that countless others are feeling something similar right now. Somewhere in this very moment, a mother is grieving the loss of her child. Somewhere a young person is crushed by failure. Somewhere an elder feels abandoned in their loneliness. When you remember this, your sadness no longer feels like a private prison. It becomes part of the shared human condition. This realization can soften even the heaviest sorrow because you are no longer alone. You are connected. Compassion dissolves sadness because it transforms the way we hold suffering. Instead of resisting it, we use it as fuel to understand others more deeply. When you know sadness in your own heart, you are better able to comfort someone else. You no longer dismiss their tears or judge their pain because you know what it feels like to carry heavy emotions. Your sadness becomes a bridge to empathy. In this way, sadness is not wasted. It becomes the soil in which compassion blooms. There is a practice in Buddhism known as Tonglen, or sending and receiving. In this meditation, you breathe in the suffering of the world, including your own, visualizing it as dark smoke. Then you breathe out light, peace, and healing, sending it to all beings. At first, this practice may feel overwhelming. Why would anyone want to breathe in suffering? But the teaching is profound. It trains the heart to stay open in the presence of pain. It teaches you to transform heaviness into love. Instead of collapsing under sadness, you use it as a doorway to compassion. Over time, this practice rewires the heart. You begin to meet sadness, whether yours or another's, not with fear or despair, but with love and resilience. Compassion also includes compassion for yourself. Too often, when we are sad, we become our harshest critic. We scold ourselves for being weak, tell ourselves to get over it, or compare ourselves to others who seem happier. This self-judgment deepens sadness, but self-compassion teaches a different approach. It invites you to speak to yourself as you would to a dear friend, gently, kindly, with patience. When sadness arises, instead of saying, "I should not feel this," you say, "It's okay to feel this. I am human. May I be kind to myself in this moment." This shift in inner dialogue can transform the entire experience of sadness. It no longer feels like a punishment. It feels like an opportunity to practice love. Scientific studies now confirm what Buddhist practitioners have known for centuries. Compassion changes the brain. Acts of compassion release oxytocin and activate areas of the brain associated with joy and connection. When you practice compassion, whether by helping someone, offering kindness, or even sending silent well-wishes, you not only ease the suffering of others, but also lighten your own sadness. The act of giving love heals the giver as much as the receiver. This is why compassionate action is so central in Buddhist practice. It creates a cycle of healing that lifts everyone involved. Compassion also breaks the cycle of self-absorption that sadness often creates. When we are sad, our focus turns inward. My pain, my loss, my disappointment. This narrowing of perspective makes sadness feel heavier. But when you shift your focus outward, asking, "How can I ease the suffering of others?" your perspective expands. You realize that your sadness is only one thread in the vast fabric of human experience. Helping others does not erase your pain, but it puts it in context. It reminds you that life is bigger than your sadness and that you still have something meaningful to give. Think of the times in your life when you comforted someone else while you were hurting yourself. Perhaps you listened to a friend's troubles, even while your own weighed heavily on you. Did you notice how, in that moment, your sadness softened? Compassion has this power. It transforms sadness into connection, pain into purpose. It reminds you that even in sorrow, you are still capable of love, and that love, expressed as compassion, becomes the very medicine that heals your heart. This lesson also challenges the way we think about strength. Many people believe that to be strong means to hide sadness, to never show vulnerability. But Buddhism teaches that true strength lies in the ability to remain open. It takes great courage to feel your own sadness and still extend love to others. It takes great strength to say, "Yes, I am hurting, but I will not let my pain close my heart." This is the strength of compassion. It turns sadness into a source of power rather than weakness. To cultivate compassion in daily life, start small. Practice loving kindness meditation, repeating phrases like, "May I be happy," "May I be free from suffering," "May I live with peace." Then extend these wishes outward. May my family be happy. May my friends be free from suffering. May all beings live in peace. This simple practice trains your mind to think compassionately, even in sadness. You can also practice compassion through small acts, smiling at a stranger, listening deeply to someone, offering help where you can. Each act may seem small, but together they create a life rooted in love rather than despair. Compassion also dissolves sadness because it connects you to the truth of interbeing. As Thich Nhat Hanh often taught, we inter-are. Your life is not separate from others. The air you breathe, the food you eat, the clothes you wear, all are the result of countless beings. You are supported by the entire universe. When you realize this, sadness loses its sense of isolation. You are not a separate, lonely self. You are part of the great web of life. And compassion is the natural expression of this truth. Ultimately, compassion transforms sadness into wisdom. When you meet suffering, your own or others, with love, you begin to see that sadness is not the end of the story. It is a doorway. It leads you to deeper connection, greater empathy, and a wider heart. The sadness that once felt like a prison becomes the very force that expands your humanity. You realize that sadness is not wasted. It is the soil from which compassion grows. So when sadness visits, do not close your heart. Open it wider. Let your pain connect you to the pain of others. Let your tears remind you of the tears of the world. Instead of asking, "Why me?" ask, "How can this sadness help me understand others more deeply?" Then act with compassion, both toward yourself and others. In that choice, sadness dissolves. It loses its power to isolate you, and instead it becomes a bridge of connection. This is the great power of compassion. It turns sadness into love. It does not erase suffering, but it transforms it. It makes your pain meaningful, your sorrow purposeful, your heart unbreakable. In compassion, you find freedom, not the freedom of never feeling sad, but the freedom of knowing that sadness can always be transformed into love, and love, once awakened, cannot be taken away. Finding unshakable peace through mindfulness of the present moment. Among all the lessons Buddhism offers, perhaps none is more central, more transformative, or more directly capable of dissolving sadness than the practice of mindfulness, the art of living fully in the present moment. Sadness, at its core, is often tied to time. We mourn the past, replaying moments we wish we could change, clinging to memories that can never return. Or we worry about the future, imagining pain, disappointment, or emptiness that has not yet come. The mind, caught in these loops of time, creates suffering that weighs on the heart. Mindfulness interrupts this cycle. It reminds us that the only true place we ever live is now. The past is gone, the future has not arrived, but this breath, this step, this moment, this is real. When you train your heart and mind to rest in the present, sadness loses its grip because it thrives on what is no longer here or what is not yet here. At first, this may sound simple. Live in the present. But when you try it, you realize how restless the mind truly is. Sit quietly for just 1 minute and notice how quickly thoughts pull you into the past or future. Why did that happen? What will they think? What if tomorrow goes wrong? The mind rarely rests in now, but mindfulness is a practice. It is not about silencing the mind by force. It is about noticing when the mind wanders and gently returning it to the present again and again. Each return is a victory. Each return is a step away from sadness and a step toward peace. When you are mindful, even simple things become sacred. Drinking tea becomes an act of presence, the warmth of the cup, the aroma rising, the taste unfolding on your tongue. Walking becomes meditation, the feeling of your feet touching the earth, the rhythm of your breath, the openness of the sky above you. These small acts, when lived fully, reveal a truth. Peace is not hidden in the extraordinary. It is always available in the ordinary, if you are fully present. Sadness fades because the mind is no longer lost in what was or what might be. It is anchored in what is. Mindfulness also changes the way you experience sadness itself. Instead of resisting it or drowning in it, you observe it as part of the present. You notice where it rests in your body, how it shifts with each breath, how it rises and falls. By being mindful, you create space between you and the sadness. You see it as an experience, not as your identity. You say, "Sadness is here," instead of, "I am sadness." That small shift is powerful. It turns sadness into something you can witness rather than something you must become. And in that witnessing, freedom begins to emerge. There is a story of a monk who carried a glass of water during his meditation. He would swirl the water and it became cloudy. He would then set the glass down and slowly the particles settled, leaving the water clear. "This," he said, "is the mind." When we are restless, clinging to the past or future, the water of our mind is clouded. We cannot see clearly. But when we rest in the present, the water settles. Clarity returns. Sadness, like the swirling particles, may still be there, but it no longer clouds everything. Through mindfulness, the mind becomes clear again. The practice of mindfulness is accessible in every moment. You do not need to retreat to a monastery or sit for hours in silence to begin. Start with your breath. Each inhale, each exhale, be aware of it. When your mind wanders, gently guide it back to the breath. Start with your body. Notice the sensations in your hands, your feet, your chest. Notice the tension, the warmth, the energy. Start with your surroundings. Listen to the sounds, feel the air on your skin, notice the colors around you. Each moment of attention pulls you out of the sadness created by time and anchors you in the only place peace can be found, the present. Mindfulness also transforms relationships. Often, sadness in relationships comes because we are not truly present with others. We sit together but are lost in our phones. We talk but do not listen. We are physically there but mentally elsewhere. This absence creates disconnection, and disconnection breeds sadness. But when you bring mindfulness to your interactions, everything changes. Listening becomes deeper, smiles become brighter, love becomes more alive. When you are fully present with someone, they feel seen, valued, and loved. This presence nourishes both hearts, dissolving sadness born of loneliness and neglect. Sadness also arises when we resist reality, wishing the present were different. I should be happier. This moment should not be this way. Mindfulness teaches radical acceptance, to be with reality as it is, without judgment. This does not mean resignation. It means seeing clearly first, before acting. If you are sad, mindfulness does not force you to deny it. It invites you to say, "Sadness is here. This is my present reality." In that acceptance, resistance softens and sadness loses the second arrow, the extra suffering we add by saying, "This should not be happening." Acceptance clears the ground, allowing wise action to follow. Over time, mindfulness rewires the way you relate to life. You begin to notice the small joys you once overlooked, the laughter of children, the song of birds, the softness of your pillow at night. You begin to experience gratitude not as an abstract idea but as a lived experience. Sadness, though it may still come, no longer dominates, because your attention rests more often on the richness of the present. You learn to see beauty even in imperfection, peace even in ordinary things. This is the heart of mindful living. Mindfulness also reveals the impermanence of sadness. When you observe your sadness mindfully, you see that it is not a solid block but a shifting process. One moment it feels heavy in your chest, the next it moves to your thoughts, the next it begins to soften. By watching it, you realize that sadness is not fixed. It is alive, changing, moving. This realization gives you hope. No matter how heavy it feels, sadness cannot stay forever. Like clouds, it will eventually drift. Mindfulness trains you to trust this flow. Another aspect of mindfulness is compassion. When you are present with your sadness, you naturally begin to treat yourself with kindness. You no longer scold yourself for feeling down. Instead, you breathe with it, soften around it, and say, "This too is part of being human." This self-compassion is healing. It turns sadness into a gentle teacher rather than a cruel enemy. And when you extend mindfulness outward, you become more compassionate toward others. You see their struggles more clearly because you are fully present with them. This presence itself is a gift. It heals sadness not only in you but in those around you. Even science now confirms what Buddhism has taught for centuries. Mindfulness reduces depression, anxiety, and sadness by changing the brain's patterns. It calms the amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear and stress, and strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part that governs awareness and regulation. But beyond the science, mindfulness touches the heart. It teaches you that peace is always available, even in sadness, if you return to now. The practice can be deepened through formal meditation. Sit in silence for 10 minutes each day. Focus on your breath. When sadness arises, do not chase it away. Observe it. Notice its texture, its energy, its impermanence. Let it come and go, like clouds in the sky. Over time, you will discover a profound truth. You are not your sadness. You are the awareness that sees it. That awareness is vast, open, and free. Sadness may visit, but awareness remains untouched. Resting in that awareness is liberation. But mindfulness is not limited to formal practice. It is a way of life. You can eat mindfully, walk mindfully, work mindfully, even wash dishes mindfully. Every act becomes a meditation when you bring full presence to it. And in each act, sadness has less space to dominate because your attention is rooted in the richness of now. So when sadness overwhelms you, return to the present. Anchor yourself in your breath. Feel your body sitting on the earth. Listen to the sounds around you. Remind yourself, this moment is enough. Sadness may still whisper about the past or future, but you need not follow. Stay here, now, and peace will reveal itself. This is the essence of mindfulness. To stop wandering in time, to stop clinging to what is gone or fearing what has not come, and to live fully in what is. In this presence, sadness dissolves, not because life becomes perfect, but because your relationship with life changes. You are no longer lost in regrets or fears. You are alive, awake, and free. And in that freedom, you discover the greatest truth of all. Peace has never been outside you. It has always been here, in this moment, waiting for you to notice. Equanimity, the unshakable heart beyond sadness. There is a kind of peace that is deeper than happiness, stronger than joy, and more enduring than any fleeting comfort. It is called equanimity. In Buddhism, equanimity, upekkha, is the balanced mind, the calm heart that remains steady through all of life's storms. It is not coldness or detachment. It is not the absence of feeling. Rather, it is the ability to meet both joy and sorrow, gain and loss, praise and blame, success and failure, without being thrown off balance. It is the strength of a mountain that does not tremble in the wind, the vastness of the ocean that does not overflow when rivers pour in, the spaciousness of the sky that is never harmed by the storms that pass through it. When you cultivate equanimity, sadness no longer has the power to drag you into despair. It may still arise, but you meet it with steadiness, with clarity, with a heart that cannot be broken. Why is equanimity so powerful against sadness? Because sadness often comes from imbalance. When good things happen, we cling to them desperately, and when they fade, we collapse. When painful things happen, we resist them fiercely, and when they persist, we drown. Equanimity dissolves both tendencies. It teaches us to receive life as it is, without clinging to what we like or resisting what we dislike. When joy comes, we enjoy it fully, but we do not cling. When sadness comes, we feel it fully, but we do not drown. We remain steady, like a boat that floats even on rough waters. The Buddha described life as subject to the 8 worldly winds: gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disgrace, pleasure and pain. These winds blow ceaselessly, sometimes lifting us up, sometimes pulling us down. Most people are tossed endlessly, their happiness and sadness rising and falling with these winds. But the one who cultivates equanimity becomes like a deep-rooted tree. The winds may shake the branches, but the roots remain firm. Sadness may visit, but it no longer uproots the heart. To cultivate equanimity, you must first see clearly the nature of life. Everything is impermanent. Everything is interconnected. Everything arises and passes according to conditions. When you truly understand this, you no longer cling so tightly to pleasure or resist pain so fiercely. You realize that both are temporary, both are natural, both are part of the flow. This insight creates balance. It allows you to meet sadness with the same calm attention you give to joy. Imagine sitting on the bank of a river. The water flows endlessly, carrying leaves, branches, sometimes flowers, sometimes debris. If you reach in and try to grasp the flowers, you disturb the flow. If you fight against the debris, you become exhausted. But if you sit with equanimity, you allow the river to flow, watching it without clinging or resisting. Life is that river. Equanimity is the wisdom to sit calmly and let it flow. Sadness is one of the many things that float by. You need not grasp it, and you need not fight it. You simply let it pass. Equanimity also requires compassion. Without compassion, equanimity can become indifference. True equanimity is not about shutting down your heart. It is about opening it so wide that it cannot be shaken. It is about caring deeply for yourself and others while recognizing that you cannot control every outcome. You act with love, but you release the demand that life must always go your way. This balance, love without clinging, care without control, is the essence of equanimity. It allows you to live fully engaged, yet free from the suffering of endless attachment. Practicing equanimity in daily life means noticing when you are pulled by extremes. When good fortune comes, do you cling, afraid to lose it? When misfortune comes, do you collapse, convinced it will never end? Each time you notice these extremes, pause, breathe, remind yourself, this too will pass. I can meet it with balance. With time, this practice becomes natural. You begin to live not on the roller coaster of emotions, but on the steady ground of awareness. Sadness may still arise, but it feels lighter because you are no longer pulled to extremes. There is a beautiful image often used to describe equanimity: the lotus. The lotus grows in muddy water, yet its petals remain untouched by the mud. In the same way, equanimity allows you to live in the world, surrounded by joy and sorrow, without being stained by either. Sadness may surround you, but it does not cling to you. You remain free, balanced, pure. Equanimity also transforms how you relate to others. Much sadness arises because we cling to people, expecting them to behave exactly as we wish. When they disappoint us, sadness follows. Equanimity teaches us to love without attachment. You care for others deeply, but you respect their freedom. You offer compassion, but you do not demand control. This balance dissolves the sadness born of unmet expectations. It allows relationships to be sources of joy rather than chains of suffering. In meditation, equanimity is cultivated by observing everything that arises, thoughts, feelings, sensations, without clinging or resisting. When a pleasant thought arises, you notice it, then let it go. When sadness arises, you notice it, then let it go. Over time, this practice strengthens your ability to remain calm even in life's storms. You become like the sky, vast and spacious, through which clouds of every kind drift. Some clouds are bright, some are dark, but none can harm the sky. Equanimity does not mean sadness will vanish. It means sadness will no longer overwhelm you. You will feel it, acknowledge it, and let it go. You will see it as one wave in the great ocean of life, rising and falling like all others. This freedom is not cold. It is warm, compassionate, steady. It is the peace of knowing that no matter what arises, you can meet it with balance. So when sadness visits, practice equanimity. Do not fight it. Do not cling to it. Sit like a mountain, calm and steady. Let the winds of gain and loss, pleasure and pain blow around you, but do not be moved from your center. Feel sadness, yes, but know it is not permanent. Care deeply, yes, but without demanding that life be different. Love fully, yes, but without clinging. This is the power of equanimity, the unshakable heart beyond sadness. The freedom of surrender, letting life be as it is. Sadness grows strongest when we fight against reality. The mind resists what is, arguing with the present moment, clinging to the idea that life should be different. We replay the past, saying, "This should not have happened." We project into the future, saying, "This must not happen." In both cases, we are at war with what is beyond our control. That inner war fuels sadness more than the circumstances themselves. Buddhism teaches that liberation begins when we surrender, not as defeat, not as weakness, but as the profound wisdom of letting life be as it is. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means laying down the unnecessary weapons of resistance. It means flowing with the river instead of exhausting yourself trying to stop it. The truth is simple, yet hard to accept. Life will not always go our way. People change, health fades, plans collapse, and loss is inevitable. Much of our sadness comes from insisting that it must be otherwise. But when we surrender, when we release the demand that life conform to our will, a surprising peace emerges. We realize that we do not need to control everything to be okay. We realize that peace is found not in bending reality to our desires, but in opening ourselves to reality as it unfolds. Consider the image of a sailor at sea. When the storm comes, he cannot stop the winds or calm the waves. If he fights the storm, he risks destruction. But if he surrenders, adjusting his sails, moving with the waves, trusting the sea, he survives. In the same way, life will bring storms you cannot control. Sadness deepens when you resist. But if you surrender, if you move with life instead of against it, you remain steady. The storm may still rage, but it no longer breaks you. Surrender does not mean passivity. It does not mean you stop acting or caring. It means you act wisely from a place of acceptance rather than resistance. For example, if sadness arises from a loss, surrender means acknowledging the loss fully instead of pretending it did not happen. From that place of acceptance, you can grieve, heal, and eventually grow. If sadness arises from failure, surrender means accepting that the outcome was not what you hoped. From that place of truth, you can learn, adapt, and try again. Without surrender, you waste energy denying reality. With surrender, you use that energy to respond with wisdom. Much of our sadness also comes from clinging to control. We believe that if we hold tightly enough, we can prevent loss, prevent pain, prevent change. But control is an illusion. The more tightly we cling, the more suffering we create. Surrender is the recognition that life is bigger than our grasp. It is the humility to admit that we cannot control every outcome and the courage to live with openness anyway. When you surrender, you are no longer enslaved by the need to control. You allow life to unfold, and in that allowance, sadness loses its grip. There is a story of a monk who carried a heavy bag of stones wherever he went. One day, a fellow traveler asked him why he burdened himself so unnecessarily. The monk smiled and replied, "Because this is what most people do with life. They carry the weight of what they cannot control." Then he dropped the bag and said, "This is surrender." Sadness often feels like that bag of stones. Each stone is a resistance, a memory we refuse to release, an expectation we refuse to let go, a fear we refuse to face. When we surrender, we drop the bag. The stones may still exist, but they no longer weigh on us. Surrender also transforms our relationship with time. We often resist the past, wishing it could be different, or resist the future, fearing what it might bring. Surrender means releasing those resistances. The past cannot be undone, the future cannot be controlled. All we ever have is this moment. When we surrender to now, sadness rooted in time begins to fade. The past becomes memory, the future becomes possibility, and the present becomes enough. This lesson also reveals why surrender requires trust. To surrender is to trust life, to trust the universe, to trust the flow of conditions that shape existence. This does not mean blind faith. It means seeing clearly that life has always carried you forward, even through storms. Think of times in your past when you thought you could not survive, yet you did. Think of challenges that seemed unbearable, yet became turning points. Life has a way of carrying us, even when we do not understand. Surrender is choosing to trust that flow, knowing that you are part of something larger, something wiser, something vast. Surrender also requires courage. It takes courage to stop resisting because resistance feels safe. It gives us the illusion of control. To surrender feels like stepping into the unknown, but the truth is that control was always an illusion. The real safety lies in trust, in openness, in allowing life to be what it is. When you find this courage, you discover a peace that cannot be shaken because it no longer depends on circumstances. On a practical level, how do you practice surrender? Begin by noticing your resistance. When sadness arises, ask yourself, what am I fighting? What am I refusing to accept? Perhaps you are clinging to the way things used to be. Perhaps you are demanding that someone act differently. Perhaps you are afraid of uncertainty. Whatever the resistance, name it. Then breathe deeply and say, I release this. I allow life to be as it is. This simple practice shifts your relationship with sadness. You stop feeding it with resistance and you begin to meet it with acceptance. Meditation is also a practice of surrender. Sit quietly, observe your breath, and allow thoughts and emotions to arise. Do not resist them, do not chase them, do not judge them. Simply let them come and go. This teaches the mind to surrender to the flow of experience. Sadness may arise during meditation, but instead of fighting it, you let it be. Over time, this practice strengthens your ability to surrender in daily life. You learn that you do not need to control your mind or emotions. You only need to allow them, and they will pass naturally. Surrender also transforms relationships. Many conflicts arise because we refuse to accept others as they are. We want them to fit our expectations, to behave according to our desires. This clinging creates endless sadness. Surrender means allowing people to be themselves. It means loving without demanding, caring without controlling. This does not mean tolerating harm or staying in unhealthy situations. It means recognizing that each person walks their own path. When you surrender the need to control others, relationships become freer, lighter, more authentic. The ultimate surrender, of course, is to life itself. We resist aging, we resist loss, we resist death. Yet these are truths no one can escape. Sadness arises when we refuse to accept them. But when we surrender to life's impermanence, we discover peace. We realize that every moment is precious because it cannot be held forever. We realize that death is not an enemy, but part of the cycle of existence. Surrender to this truth does not make life darker, it makes it brighter. It teaches us to cherish what is here now, to love more deeply, to live more fully. There is a profound paradox in surrender. When you let go of control, you actually gain freedom. You no longer waste energy fighting what you cannot change. You no longer exhaust yourself resisting reality. That energy is freed to live, to love, to grow. Sadness loses its chains because you are no longer bound to what must eventually change. You become fluid, adaptable, resilient. You discover that peace is not in controlling life, but in flowing with it. So when sadness comes, practice surrender. Notice what you are resisting. Breathe, soften, release. Say to yourself, I allow life to be as it is. I surrender to this moment. Each time you do, the weight of sadness lightens. You begin to live not as a prisoner of resistance, but as a participant in life's flow. This is the freedom of surrender. It is not defeat, it is victory. It is not weakness, it is strength. It is the wisdom to see that life cannot be controlled and the courage to live fully anyway. In surrender, sadness loses its foundation. It may still appear, but it cannot dominate because you are no longer at war with life. You are at peace with it, and that peace, once discovered, cannot be taken away. The wisdom of seeing sadness as a teacher, not an enemy. Most of us grow up fearing sadness. From childhood, we are told that to feel sad is to be weak, to cry is to be fragile, to struggle emotionally is to be broken. Because of this conditioning, when sadness arises, our first reaction is often rejection. Why me? I should not feel this. I must get rid of it. We see sadness as an enemy to be defeated, a shadow to be avoided, a flaw to be corrected. But Buddhism invites us to look more deeply. It teaches that sadness is not your enemy, it is your teacher. If you have the courage to stop running, to stop fighting, and instead sit with sadness, it reveals truths about life, about yourself, and about the path to peace. Every wave of sadness carries a message. Every tear has wisdom. When you learn to listen, sadness becomes less of a prison and more of a guide. Why is sadness such a powerful teacher? Because it strips away illusions. When everything goes our way, it is easy to live in distraction. We lose ourselves in pleasures, in possessions, in surface-level concerns. But when sadness enters, the illusions begin to fall apart. Sadness reminds us of impermanence, that people change, that moments fade, that life is fragile. Sadness reminds us of attachment, that much of our suffering comes from clinging to what cannot last. Sadness reminds us of compassion, that we are not alone in our struggles, that others suffer too. These truths are difficult, but they are also liberating. They cut through the false promises of the world and point us back to what is real. Think of sadness as a mirror. When it arises, it reflects back what you value most. If you are sad about losing someone, it shows you how deeply you loved. If you are sad about failure, it shows you how strongly you tied your worth to success. If you are sad about change, it shows you where you clung to permanence. The mirror may be uncomfortable, but it is honest. It shows you where your attachments lie, where your illusions are strongest, where your healing is needed. If you are willing to look, sadness teaches you what no amount of comfort ever could. There is a story in Buddhist tradition of a grieving mother named Kisa Gotami. Her only child died, and in her despair, she went to the Buddha, begging him to bring the child back. The Buddha told her to bring a handful of mustard seeds from any household in the village that had not experienced death. She went door to door, but every house she visited had lost someone. At last, she returned to the Buddha, realizing the truth. Suffering and loss are universal. Her sadness had been unbearable, but through it she learned compassion. She saw that her pain connected her to every other human being. That realization transformed her grief into wisdom. This story reminds us, sadness itself can open the door to truth if we allow it to teach us. One of the greatest lessons sadness teaches is humility. When life is easy, we may believe we are in control, but sadness humbles us, reminding us of our limits. It shows us that we cannot prevent loss, we cannot control time, we cannot guarantee outcomes. At first, this humility feels painful, but eventually it becomes liberating. When you stop demanding absolute control, you stop exhausting yourself with impossible battles. Sadness teaches you to bow to life, to surrender to its flow, and in that surrender, you find peace. Sadness also teaches resilience. Each time you face sadness and survive, you grow stronger. You learn that you can sit with pain without being destroyed. You learn that tears do not break you, they cleanse you. You learn that sadness is heavy, yes, but it passes. Every experience of sadness becomes a kind of training, teaching you patience, teaching you courage, teaching you endurance. Over time, sadness transforms from something you fear into something you trust, because you know that every time it comes, you grow wiser. Another lesson sadness teaches is gratitude. When you lose something or someone, sadness makes you realize how precious they were. It awakens you to the fragility of life, urging you to treasure what remains. Without sadness, gratitude often remains shallow. But when sadness reminds you that everything is temporary, gratitude becomes deep. You begin to see beauty in the smallest things, the sound of laughter, the warmth of sunlight, the presence of loved ones. Sadness opens your eyes, teaching you not to take anything for granted. On a deeper level, sadness teaches compassion not only for others, but for yourself. When you are sad, you see your own vulnerability. You realize that you too are human, fragile, imperfect, in need of kindness. If you can turn toward yourself with compassion in sadness, you learn to speak gently to your own heart. You say, "It's okay to feel this. I am allowed to be human. I will care for myself." This self-compassion, born of sadness, becomes a foundation for healing. Without sadness, you might never learn how to truly care for yourself. Buddhism encourages us to transform sadness into wisdom through mindfulness. Instead of rejecting sadness, observe it. Sit with it, breathe with it, and ask, what is this sadness teaching me? Perhaps it is teaching you about impermanence. Perhaps it is teaching you about love. Perhaps it is teaching you about what truly matters. Each time you meet sadness with awareness, you extract its lesson. Slowly, sadness becomes less of a burden and more of a teacher. Consider the image of fire. Left uncontrolled, fire can destroy. But when understood and used wisely, fire gives warmth and light. Sadness is like fire. If you resist it, deny it, or cling to it, it burns you. But if you approach it with awareness, it illuminates. It warms your compassion, lights your wisdom, and reveals truths that comfort never could. Sadness is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to teach you. So how do you put this into practice? The next time sadness arises, pause. Instead of asking, "How do I escape this?" ask, "What is this teaching me?" Then listen. Maybe sadness is showing you where you need to let go. Maybe it is reminding you of the depth of your love. Maybe it is pointing you back to the present moment. Whatever the lesson, honor it. Write it down. Reflect on it. Treat sadness as a wise teacher who visits with important messages. The more you do this, the less you fear sadness. You begin to welcome it, knowing that it always carries wisdom. Over time, this practice transforms your relationship with sadness completely. It no longer feels like an enemy to be avoided. It becomes a teacher you respect. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What can I learn?" You stop seeing sadness as punishment and start seeing it as guidance. And in that shift, sadness loses its power to control you. It becomes lighter, softer, more meaningful. This is the great wisdom of Buddhism. Suffering is not the end of the path. It is the beginning. The Buddha himself said, "I teach suffering, and the end of suffering." The path begins by acknowledging sadness, listening to it, learning from it. Only then can you transcend it. Sadness, when seen as a teacher, becomes the very force that leads you to peace. So the next time sadness visits, do not close the door. Invite it in. Sit with it as you would with a wise elder. Ask it what it has come to show you. Listen with patience, with compassion, with humility. Then bow to its lesson and let it go. This is how sadness transforms from enemy into guide, from prison into path, from weight into wisdom. When you learn to see sadness this way, you discover that it was never here to break you. It was here to awaken you. And once awakened, you realize that even sadness is part of the great teaching of life, pointing you always toward freedom, compassion, and peace. The liberation of seeing sadness as empty and passing. One of the most profound teachings of Buddhism is the teaching of emptiness, shunyata. At first, the word can sound frightening, as if it means nothingness or void. But emptiness in Buddhism does not mean that life has no meaning. It means that nothing exists independently, nothing exists permanently, nothing exists as a solid, unchanging self. Everything arises due to conditions, and everything passes when those conditions change. When we apply this teaching to sadness, something extraordinary happens. We realize that sadness itself is empty. It feels heavy, solid, permanent. But when we look deeply, we see that it has no fixed essence. It is a passing combination of thoughts, feelings, and sensations, arising due to causes, staying for a while, and fading when conditions shift. To see sadness as empty is to take away its power. It no longer feels like an immovable wall, but like a passing cloud in the vastness of the sky. Most people experience sadness as something solid, like a heavy stone in the heart. It feels permanent, as if it will last forever. The mind says, "I am sad. This sadness defines me. This is who I am, but this is an illusion." If sadness were truly permanent, it would never change, yet it does change. Think of the times when sadness felt overwhelming, and yet a moment of laughter, a kind word or a shift in attention lightened it. Even deep grief, though it may remain, softens with time. Sadness is not a stone, it is a process. It arises, peaks, and fades, just like waves on the ocean. To see this clearly is to free yourself from its prison. When you observe sadness mindfully, you begin to see its parts. Sadness is not one thing. It is a mixture of bodily sensations, heaviness in the chest, tightness in the throat, tears in the eyes. It is a mixture of thoughts, memories replayed, fears imagined, stories repeated. It is a mixture of emotions, grief, longing, disappointment, loneliness. When you break it down like this, sadness loses its solidity. It becomes clear that sadness is not a single, permanent entity, but a collection of changing conditions. This insight is the essence of emptiness. To see sadness as empty is also to see that it is not truly yours in the way you think. Sadness arises due to causes, loss, unmet expectations, hormones, fatigue, memories, even weather. None of these are entirely within your control. Just as clouds form when conditions are right, sadness forms when causes come together. It is not a personal flaw. It is part of the natural process of life. When you see this, you stop blaming yourself for sadness. You stop thinking, something is wrong with me. You realize sadness is arising because conditions are here. When conditions change, it will pass. This understanding takes away shame and replaces it with wisdom. There is a meditation practice in Buddhism called Vipassana, or insight meditation, where you observe everything that arises, sensations, thoughts, emotions, without clinging or resisting. You watch sadness come, you feel its texture, and you watch it go. Through this practice, you see directly that sadness is impermanent, that it has no fixed core, that it is empty. The more you see this, the less power sadness has over you. It becomes just another visitor in the house of awareness, no more threatening than joy, no more permanent than fear. Consider the image of a rainbow. From a distance it looks solid, beautiful, even magical, but when you approach, you realize it has no substance. It is a play of light, moisture, and perspective. Sadness is like that rainbow. It feels heavy and real, but when you look deeply, you see it is a play of conditions. It has no solid essence. The recognition of this emptiness does not make sadness meaningless. It makes it manageable. You stop being trapped in the illusion of its permanence. Seeing sadness as empty also reveals the truth of interconnection. Your sadness is not separate from the world. It arises because of countless conditions: your upbringing, your relationships, your environment, even the history of humanity itself. In this sense, sadness is not a personal failure. It is part of the shared fabric of life. Everyone who has ever lived has tasted sadness. When you see this, your sadness connects you to others instead of isolating you. You realize that sadness is not mine, it is ours. This transforms loneliness into compassion. On a deeper level, emptiness points us back to the spaciousness of awareness. Imagine the sky. Clouds drift across it, sometimes white and soft, sometimes dark and heavy. Sadness is like those clouds. It can feel overwhelming, as if it covers everything, but the sky itself is never harmed by the clouds. The sky is vast, open, untouched. In the same way, your awareness, the pure knowing of your mind, is never harmed by sadness. Sadness may pass through, but awareness remains clear. To see this is liberation. You realize, I am not sadness. I am the awareness that sees sadness, that awareness is spacious, free, and unshakable. This teaching also changes the way you hold joy. If sadness is empty and impermanent, so too is joy. At first, this may sound depressing, but in fact it is liberating. Because joy is impermanent, you learn to cherish it fully while it is here. You stop clinging, stop demanding it to last forever, and simply enjoy the present. Because sadness is impermanent, you learn not to fear it. You know it cannot stay. In this balance, equanimity arises, the calm ability to live fully without being shaken by change. Practicing the wisdom of emptiness in daily life means shifting your perspective whenever sadness arises. Instead of saying, I am sad, say, sadness is arising. Instead of saying, this sadness will never end, say, sadness is impermanent, it will pass. Instead of saying, this sadness is who I am, say, this sadness is a collection of conditions, not my essence. Each of these reminders helps you see sadness as empty, as passing, as non-self. Each reminder weakens sadness's grip. There is a story of two monks watching a flag waving in the wind. One said, the flag is moving. The other said, no, the wind is moving. The Buddha, overhearing, said, no, your mind is moving. Sadness is like that flag. It appears solid, but it is only movement of thoughts, of sensations, of mind. When you see this, You stop clinging to sadness as a solid reality. You see it as empty movement, and in that seeing, you are free. This does not mean sadness will never come again. It means that when it comes, it no longer terrifies you. You no longer mistake it for a permanent prison. You see it for what it is: empty, passing, conditioned. You meet it with patience, with mindfulness, with compassion, and because you no longer cling to it, it passes more easily. Ultimately, the wisdom of emptiness transforms sadness into peace. You realize that sadness was never your enemy. It was always a teacher, pointing you to the truth that nothing is permanent, nothing is separate, nothing is solid. When you live from this truth, you no longer fear sadness. You no longer cling to joy. You live in balance, in equanimity, in freedom. So the next time sadness visits, look deeply. Break it apart. See its parts, sensations, thoughts, emotions. See its causes, attachments, changes, conditions. See its impermanence, arising, staying, fading. See its emptiness. It has no solid core. Then rest in awareness, the vast sky untouched by clouds. This is liberation. Sadness may still appear, but it can no longer control you. It becomes only a passing visitor in the vastness of your being. 25. The path of inner freedom. Discovering that sadness cannot touch your true nature. Sadness feels overwhelming because we mistake it for the whole of our being. When it arises, it fills the mind, clouds the heart, and whispers, "This is who you are now." In those moments, we believe the story that sadness tells, that we are broken, that we are trapped, that we will never be free again. But Buddhism offers a deeper truth, a truth that cuts through even the heaviest sorrow. At your core, you are not sadness. You are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not even the stories you tell yourself. Beneath all of it lies your true nature, pure awareness, spacious and free, untouched by passing storms. When you discover this truth, sadness can still appear, but it cannot control you. You realize that sadness is like weather, while you are like the sky. The storm may rage, but the sky remains vast and unbroken. To understand this truth, we must look deeply into the nature of mind. Thoughts arise, linger, and dissolve. Emotions surge, crest, and fade. Sensations shift, moment by moment. If all these are impermanent, how can they be who you truly are? The self you cling to, the I who is sad, is not a solid entity. It is a collection of passing conditions. Beneath them lies awareness itself, the knowing, the witnessing, the presence that sees all experiences. This awareness is steady. It is the ground on which all experiences arise and fade. Sadness may cloud it, but it cannot harm it. Awareness remains clear, just as the sky remains untouched by the clouds. The Buddha often described liberation as realizing this deeper nature of mind. We suffer not because sadness arises, but because we identify with it. We say, "I am sad," instead of, "Sadness is arising in me." That small shift changes everything. In the first, sadness becomes your identity. In the second, sadness becomes an experience, passing, temporary, not who you truly are. When you rest in awareness rather than in emotion, sadness loses its grip. It may still be there, but it is lighter, less personal, more like a passing visitor than a permanent resident. Think of the ocean. Waves rise and fall, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy. If you believe you are only the wave, every rise and fall feels like life or death. But if you realize you are the ocean itself, waves lose their terror. Sadness is a wave. You are the ocean. The wave may be high and fierce, but it cannot harm the vastness beneath. In this realization lies inner freedom. Sadness often convinces us that it is permanent, but when you observe it with mindfulness, you see its impermanence. One moment, it feels heavy in the chest. Another moment, it shifts into restless thoughts. Another moment, it softens slightly, replaced by distraction. Sadness is not a fixed block, it is movement. And if it is movement, it cannot define you. What defines you is the space in which movement happens. That space, your awareness, is untouched. This is why the Buddha taught that liberation is not about eliminating all emotions, but about seeing their true nature. Sadness may still appear, but it can no longer enslave you because you no longer mistake it for yourself. Another way to see this truth is through the practice of observing thoughts. Sit quietly and watch your mind. A thought arises, I am lonely. Another thought arises, life is unfair. Another, this will never change. If you cling to these thoughts, sadness deepens. But if you observe them as passing events like leaves floating down a stream, they lose their weight. You realize that thoughts are not facts. They come and go, and you remain. The one who observes is free from the stories. This observer, this awareness, is your true nature. Sadness also teaches us where we are still attached. When it arises, ask yourself, what am I holding on to that is causing this pain? Perhaps it is a memory of how life used to be. Perhaps it is an expectation of how life should be. Perhaps it is the illusion of control. Awareness allows you to see these attachments clearly. And when you see them, you can release them. This release is not forced. It happens naturally when you realize that what you cling to was never permanent to begin with. Sadness becomes lighter because the chains of attachment loosen. One of the most profound practices in Buddhism is simply sitting and resting in awareness itself. Instead of focusing on thoughts or emotions, you rest as the space in which they appear. When sadness comes, you say, welcome, sadness. You are allowed here, but you are not who I am. You let it arise, stay, and pass, while you remain the vast awareness that sees it. Over time, this practice reveals the truth. Awareness is unshakable. No sadness, no matter how deep, can touch its essence. This realization brings a freedom greater than any temporary happiness, because it is not dependent on conditions. It is always here, always available, always free. This lesson also teaches us compassion. When you realize that your true nature is awareness, not sadness, you also see that the same is true for others. Everyone experiences sadness, but no one is defined by it. Everyone carries storms, but beneath those storms lies the same vast awareness. This recognition softens the heart. You begin to see beyond people's emotions and stories, seeing instead their true nature. Compassion flows naturally because you recognize yourself in them. Sadness can also become a doorway to deeper presence. When sadness appears, instead of resisting, you can use it as a reminder to return to awareness. Each time you feel the heaviness, you ask, who is aware of this sadness? And in that moment, you step back into the vastness of awareness itself. Sadness becomes the bell that wakes you up, pulling you out of identification and into freedom. In this way, sadness is no longer a curse. It is a teacher, pointing you back to your true self. To practice this daily, try this simple meditation. Sit quietly and observe your breath. When sadness arises, do not resist it. Place your attention on the awareness that notices it. Ask yourself, am I this sadness, or am I the awareness noticing it? Sit with that question. Slowly, the truth reveals itself. You are the awareness, not the emotion. The sadness will pass, but awareness remains. This practice, repeated daily, builds unshakable freedom. The ultimate gift of this teaching is that it frees you from fear. Much of our fear comes from believing that emotions can destroy us. We fear sadness, we fear grief, we fear loss. But when you realize that your true nature is beyond all emotions, fear dissolves. You see that nothing, not sadness, not pain, not even death, can touch the awareness that you truly are. This is liberation. It is not about escaping life, but about living fully, without being enslaved by emotions. So the next time sadness visits, remember this: it is not who you are. It is only a passing wave, a temporary storm. You are the ocean. You are the sky. You are the vast awareness in which sadness arises and fades. When you rest in this truth, sadness loses its power. It becomes lighter, softer, almost transparent. It no longer defines you, no longer imprisons you. You are free. This is the path of inner freedom, to discover that sadness cannot touch your true nature. You are not broken, you are not trapped, you are not defined by sorrow. You are awareness itself, spacious, timeless, unshakable. When you live from this truth, sadness may still come, but it can never control you. It becomes only a visitor, while you remain forever free. As we arrive at the end of this journey, let us pause and reflect on the path we have walked together. We began with sadness, its weight, its heaviness, its power to cloud the mind and tighten the heart. We looked at how easily we mistake sadness for our identity, how quickly we say, "I am sad," as if it defines us. Yet through each lesson, step by step, Buddhism has revealed another truth. Sadness is not who you are. It is not permanent. It is not your enemy. It is a teacher, a visitor, a wave in the vast ocean of your being. You learned that sadness does not define you, that it is like a passing cloud, while you are the sky itself. You discovered that pain can be transformed into compassion, that attachment creates suffering, and that letting go creates freedom. You were reminded that impermanence is not a curse but a gift, that nothing lasts forever, not even sadness. You learned the balance of the middle path, the steadiness of equanimity, the clarity of mindfulness, and the courage of surrender. You discovered that your true nature, pure awareness, is untouched by sadness, just as the sky is never harmed by storms. Together, these teachings form a path, not a path that denies sadness or pretends it will never come again, but a path that transforms your relationship with sadness completely. You no longer need to fear it because you understand it. You no longer need to be enslaved by it because you see through its illusions. You know it is impermanent, conditioned, empty. You know it carries lessons about love, about compassion, about gratitude. You know it connects you to all beings, reminding you that suffering is universal and that compassion is the medicine we all need. The Buddha never promised that life would be free from pain. He promised that pain need not control us. He showed that suffering can be understood, transformed, and transcended. And that is the gift you now carry. You may still feel sadness, but you will no longer drown in it. You will meet it with mindfulness, with balance, with compassion. You will listen to its lessons, then let it go. You will live not as a prisoner of sadness, but as a participant in life's great flow, loving, growing, learning, and resting in peace that no storm can take away. Remember this: you are not the sadness. You are the awareness in which sadness arises and fades. You are not the storm. You are the sky. No matter how dark the clouds, the sky remains vast, open, and free. That freedom is your true nature. It has always been here, waiting for you to see it. So as you leave these teachings, carry this truth in your heart. Sadness may visit, but it cannot stay. It may whisper, but it cannot define you. You are deeper than sadness, stronger than sorrow, freer than fear. Walk gently, walk mindfully, walk with compassion for yourself and for others. And each time sadness arises, let it remind you of the wisdom you now hold, that beyond all storms, beyond all tears, there is a peace that nothing can touch.